Martinello.
Present.
Larson.
Here.
Gallagher.
Here.
Hager.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
DNA.
Here.
Thank you. If you'll please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Councilwoman Ramirez would like to move agenda item number 3 to agenda night number 1, if there are no objections.
None.
Everybody okay?
No objections.
Perfect, thank you. So then our first agenda item will be the government open house proposal. Could you please speak to that for us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you guys so much for being amenable to moving this ahead in the agenda. I have worked alongside with mayor and staff to kind of present proposed programs in a more formal, structured way. And I wanted to provide you with the document outlined on agenda page 7. We are hoping to host the Government Open House Day. We have done our best to try to be as thorough as possible. See if anyone has any questions. And yes, I think, do you think that I covered it all? Is there something that you would like me to speak to?
If I could add
Oh,
one
please.
thing.
Mhm.
Council, you'll see on the bottom of page 7 that I've put a note in here. I put an asterisk by it. I wanted you to know that this is something that I included there. In discussions with Councilwoman Ramirez and Julia, our event coordinator, and also our treasurer, we wanted to propose that this is an event that becomes part of our standing event lineup. We find that it would be very fitting with doing something to encourage youth to come out, get to know their government. Based on our current budget for events, we are able to fully accommodate the expenditures for this event. We don't see it being a huge money spender. This is something that we really want to partner with Prince William County on. Mary has given us a lot of ideas. Julia's reached out, and we have, I would say, 4 to 6 of Prince William County's different departments coming out to help support this day. So I really think this is a great event for our community to show not only our government partnership, but get the kids involved. So I would kind of like to hear in our discussion some direction on making it a staple event that Haymarket offers, with the understanding that this is something that our regular events budget would cover. And then Mary has outlined in here possible expenses. We can certainly talk to them. I will say staff and Mary, we came up with a fun kind of make and take, if you will. We want to do tie-dye with the kids, and it'll be a red, white, and blue tie-dye. So something that's just as fun and gets them involved. But that's going to be, I would say, the major expense. Everything else is pretty standard for an event.
Yes. And can I just add one tiny piece of excitement that I really, really love about this one? We have our very talented events coordinator creating a town coloring book for
Yes.
us. And so that's like one of the other things that we'll have available that day as well. So just some fun little things to make it exciting and engaging. So
Each council member is featured in the coloring book. So if you haven't gotten your photo yet, we will get you in there. Don't feel like you're left out.
In terms of the cost, any idea approximately how much the cost? I know the events budget line item will cover it, but do we know?
So we're working on the finalization of our price quote for the shirts. We could come back and have a better estimate for you once we know the coloring book as well. But we do not expect that the entire event would go over $2,500 for everything that we would want to do. If that number were to change with the purchasing of the coloring book, we certainly can let everybody know. Again, it's covered in their events. We do fully expect that this fun new coloring book is something that we would have at our town table for summer concert, Haymarket Day. It's not one that's going to go stale per se.
And if we do make it an annual event, right,
Mhm.
will it influence future budget in terms of leading to increases, or is it?
Not necessarily. So one of the things that Julia and I have been working on now that she's gotten a full year under her belt with the town is working on sponsorships and growing that for our events. I think that based on where we end up with collecting vendor fees and sponsorship fees, this is one that would fully ride under our normal event budget.
All right, thanks, Emily.
Mhm.
Kind of along those lines a little bit. I love the idea. I love that we're targeting, and given that this is targeting that school age children. Have you thought about opportunities? And I know we're going to talk probably a little bit about this, but with some of the local businesses that we have that also would cater to the same age group, as well as are there different religious organizations, that are within the community that, likely have youth programs that would possibly want to be a part of this. Is there a way to expand that in there?
I really appreciate you bringing this up. We did kind of discuss possible business partnerships or sponsorships specific to this event. However, we wanted to maybe not approach businesses asking for financial support, rather allow that to be part of the sponsorship package discussion that we again hope to grow with Julia being on board with everything and having a really strong grasp on things. We did go through the list of town businesses. I'm sorry, Julia did go through the list of the town businesses, and she has reached out to every business that caters to the elementary age group and asked them to provide a flyer. And that flyer will be part of that swag bag handout that we'll give them, because we do have leftover plastic bags from last year. So we'll put their flyers into those. We really wanted this government open house to be government focused, to kind of invite our citizens to come in and see what services we provide. We will have the touch-a-truck for the American Disposal Services. We're also inviting the fire department. We'll have our police cruisers. We also hope to have the library and different services that are available to our residents, but may not be from our town. I think that really highlights again something that they learn, and I think it starts around like first or second grade, is local, state, and federal government, like the scope of things. And so I think this will be a nice tangible concept of, wow, this is from my specific town, but my county is also considered local, and this is the services available to me. These are the things. And I also think that this kind of builds on that relationship we want to have with Prince William County, where we are a partner and things like that. So I think this would be a great outreach. As far as that goes, involving like religious or nonprofit groups at this point, I'm not sure if that follows the same mission as far as like the public service piece of it, the community government kind of side. I'm not opposed to considering that if council is open to that kind of concept and kind of inviting more youth focused organizations, whether it be religious or nonprofit based. We can have that discussion as well, but I really did want it to be government focused.
Anybody else?
Mine's the only comic comment. And that's, so I'm assuming we're going to have the tie-dye stations up here on this carpet up here?
No, sir. No, it'll be in the grass. Not even on the pavement. We're definitely looking forward to that one. We're working on coming up with a fun logo. So the shirt itself will be white. We'll have a logo. We are already thinking ahead. Any extras we will offer for sale at our summer concert, and we'll have a little tie-dye station there, so that, it's something we can do, carry it on. And adults, you can all come and make a shirt. We can make it so that council each gets a tie-dye shirt. So when you show up that day, if you would like to come festive for the event, we'll make that happen. You guys can be our trial. We're gonna tie them ahead of time and
And
Yeah.
council's support and participation reading.
Yes, thank you. So for council involvement, I have some opportunities for you. You may join us as a read aloud speaker, and we would love to have you. I will send out, once council is supportive of this and wishes to move forward and agrees to all the things, I will send out a sign up genius and you can choose a time, much like last year. I'll allot 30 minutes for you to read and to engage with the citizens at that time. You are welcome to support with the town table and kind of speak to your constituents, mingle, all those things. Really, it's kind of up to your choice. Having you here would be wonderful. I think that that's a really great opportunity for everybody. And yeah, I mean, you can also serve popcorn if you want. Everybody loves food.
This day is significant because it's the first day of summers.
It is the first full day of summer, yes,
And it's
after last
also
day of school.
Flag,
Friday the
And-
13th.
Flag Day weekend. Flag Day.
It's the Friday before Flag Day. Yes.
Well, no, that's what my question was going to be. Why this date?
Oh, mhm.
Because I know school's out on the 12th.
Mhm.
And we have the balloon fight, I guess, on the 12th,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
What do we expect the attendance will be for something like this on the day after school's
So
closed?
we did the similar timeline last year. It was the Friday before Flag Day, and the last day of school was, I believe, maybe a day or two before, and we had a pretty significant turnout. Just under 100 students or children, so well over 100 people, including their parents. Yeah, I feel like that was a pretty good turnout for the day. Again, I do hope that this year we will be able to advertise more, like, yes. Yes. So now that I'm familiar of the process of submitting this flyer to Prince William County Schools, I'll be doing that. Again, as soon as council is approving of this, we will move forward and start publicizing it and marketing it. I believe Julie already has the flyer set up and everything ready to go. So we have about, like, I believe 2 months.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It'll
a
go
month and a
out
half.
on our app.
Mhm.
We have all of our current HOA contacts. We'll kind of utilize that communications plan and we'll
Mhm.
put it out through those resources.
Yes.
We did have good success last year. Also, I'm very hopeful with as many of the departments with Prince William County that we have joining us that they'll help advertise it too.
Mhm.
It could be very well advertised and we might need to put a cap on, for example, like our t-shirt activity. It might be capped at the first 150 children that come, and then maybe we have a few extra for purchase. So we'll brainstorm through that part of it.
So we really don't know what kind of participation. This is kind of like a pilot for possibly next year.
I-
It sounds like. And-
Going off of last year's numbers, I would hope that we get another 100 students to come with their parents, if not more. So I think it would be great success to have 150 to 200, but I would be expecting 100 should the weather be nice and cooperative.
All right, so then that's what we're budgeting to, 100 people?
That's correct. We're budgeting to 150.
Okay.
Mhm.
So speak a little bit about the setup, because I mean, I think it's great to have Prince William County here.
Mhm.
And they've done before, like
Yes.
First Day when we've had that in the past. We've had the water company, we've had other things like that. I'm thinking about the educational content,
Mhm.
which we'll get to a budget question later.
Okay.
So can you speak a little bit about how that will be set up, where we would be? Is it just in this area in town?
So, much like last year, we're going to have the read aloud in here by the dais. We will not be doing PD tours this year. They will be stationed out in the parking lot. We're going to have the parking lot kind of sectioned off, the grass area, and that's where all the vehicles are going to be. I believe the fire truck is going to be closer to Jefferson Street for easy access and display.
Emergency.
Then and then we'll have our police vehicles along the front of the police department. We're gonna have kind of the tie-dye in the grass area. And I believe like the vendors also kind of in that idea of like how the farmer's market was
Right.
kind of thing. And our town tent will be in front of town hall. I mean, it's not gonna be taking over the whole parking lot, but it will take a nice chunk of that area. And again, that's why I really do want it to stay focused on the services that we provide and the government piece of it. And they have all been encouraged to bring, educational materials, be prepared to talk about what they do as their entities and departments. They are aware of the age group that should be attending and any handouts for upcoming events or programs that they offer. They're going to come prepared to hand those out as well.
Okay. So did we get commitments yet, or we're waiting on making a final?
We have
They have
commitments.
committed. They do want clarity on a lot of things.
So who do we have committed so far?
Oh, my notes are in my,
I don't have it written down, so let me try to remember. Fire and Rescue has committed, Department of Tourism, goodness gracious, Parks and Rec.
Yep.
The Office of Historic Preservation, the library, Leopold's Preserve, which is right up the road. They'll be here. Am I forgetting anyone?
American.
American Disposal will have the touch a truck.
We should ask them if they'll have the little trash cans.
That'd be cute.
Republic brought those one year.
I will say-
they're a big hit.
Most of the organizations said that they'll be providing an activity as well. So
PWC Water, maybe?
You know, we haven't reached out to them, but we can. Yeah.
They have some good stuff.
Okay, we'll
I'll
reach
add
out
that to
them.
the list.
Are there any other departments that you guys can immediately think of?
Well, we could maybe invite our supervisor.
Oh,
He's
absolutely,
always
yes, yeah.
invited.
Him and the school board will
Yep.
be invited
School board?
to do the read aloud. Absolutely.
We
Well, I
usually,
mean, as far as having their own,
Oh, you would like them to be,
well, ask them.
Able
They
to have
might
a-
want to be able to communicate with everybody, you know?
sure. I was just kind of viewing them like us where we would mingle a bit, but if you think that a table specific to their thing,
Could be good for their outreach. They might want to
okay,
help with that. And
I'm not
I mean, I
opposed
would
to that.
also- Personally, I would invite the chair.
The chair
County
of,
chair. The
county chair?
Yeah, I would. I do have one last question. So, education, right?
yes.
This is focused on education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why couldn't we use proffer dollars education for this? Think about that. Cogitate on it a little bit. Yeah, noodle on it. Because if that's the case, why not? I mean, if it's really for education,
it's an event for our community. Let me think on that.
yeah, okay. How you can justify it.
Yeah, no, thank you that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
That's it.
So on that day, I'm assuming that the police department is going to have more officers on duty? Okay, any
Yes.
idea how different it will be from a normal day in terms of how many more officers and hours and so forth?
It will not be an impactful amount. We'll be able to, with what we have available and maybe a +1, we should be good. So it won't be hugely impactful.
Okay.
That was my question, the impact on staff hours.
The
and police
nice
hours.
thing, I will say, Chief didn't right out say it, but I'll say it. The nice thing now that we have a sergeant on duty and an officer, and then you also usually have your chief and your lieutenant here is, it's a lot easier for us to kind of shift the sergeant's schedule just a little bit and have additional coverage. So, we'll have that. And then I know Chief has some part-time guys who really love these community events. We'll have their table set up with the drone as well as the other equipment. So it'll be a good showcase for them. And just to add, when Mary said that we're not doing PD tours, we're not doing them because it gets very tight, very quick. And with a lot of kids in there, it just gets to be a little bit difficult. So we want to keep everybody outside if possible. And then we'll have the readings in here. People can come in here and cool off if it's a hot day, obviously use the restrooms. So that would be the goal. Keep the carpet clean.
I really enjoyed the event last year. Do you have a book already chosen?
I have been researching a few. Maybe I could get council's insight into this. Would you prefer that I offer the same book for everyone to read, or would you prefer a choice? Meaning I provide multiple options and you can select the one of your preference. I am happy to send examples of read alouds like I did last year on a YouTube link so you can listen to them and figure out which one you prefer. What would council like?
I'd
Well-
like to serve popcorn.
You want to serve? Excellent.
From a staff perspective, I think an option of 2 or 3 might be good, because I think what we had last year that we didn't make a huge note of, but we had kids who wanted to stay and just listen to the book again.
Yes.
Or they came in at the tail end of one and they stayed and listened. So I think you might have good selection if you have 2 or 3.
Okay.
You might have people who want to come hang out while the other siblings are outside, you know?
So who's the age group we're targeting for those?
Kinder, which starts around 5, to 5th grade, which I believe could be up to 11, 12,
10, 11.
10, 11. Okay, sorry. Yes, 10, 11. Thank you. My math is really good.
Do we get to pre-approve our pictures for the coloring book?
Absolutely. Yes.
Having seen some of them already?
Yes, we can totally. So what our goal is with the coloring book is Julia's making it, but we're trying to feature each of the council members in your capacity. So for example, Vice Mayor Gallagher is our business liaison in the coloring book. So we have him out front of some of the businesses. We can totally change things. We also know that Matt Burrows, who's our maintenance guy, he is very well known. People recognize him watering the flowering baskets. So we have a fun page of him watering the flowering baskets. Each page is going to have a small caption that we write at the bottom, like a typical coloring book with a sentence, but it's going to be what your position is in the town and kind of what you do, just summarized to the elementary age level.
I'm assuming Joe and I are counting money in the.
So we have you have to see
You're
it.
gonna love yours.
Julia did a really good one of Roberto and Joe sitting together, what looks like in a meeting with a big calculator. So we are,
And me being skeptical.
so
It looks good.
definitely we'll show everybody. Julia can make tweaks within reason. We want you guys to be proud of the coloring book. We want it to be something that, you know, you have fun with. Maybe you sign the page, you know.
Oh, I love that.
Ken, you're looking at me pretty skeptical.
I'm trying to see, how do you handle ARB?
You're gonna be in front of the caboose, I think.
So how many events does that put us up to? annually?
So I'm gonna go by fiscal year and name them out for you real quick, if you don't mind. So starting July 1, you would have a summer concert in August.
Right,
You'll have Haymarket Day in October.
right.
You'll have the Christmas holiday celebration in December. Then you have a quiet period and you start your farmer's market in April. And then this government day would be in June. And I'm sorry, I skipped right over. Chiefs National Night Out happens in the beginning of August.
So 2 things in August, that's right.
And then we have our other small things. Chief does coffee with a cop. Mayor will have her monthly thing, but those are our major core community
Right,
events.
so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And farmer's market,
And-
okay,
We used to hold the Earth Day thing. We used to do a health and fitness. So
I remember.
I think this kind of could replace
Okay,
that.
all right. Any
Okay.
other questions? No? All right. We will, no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to recap the takeaways for maybe inclusion for us and staff. The takeaway is that we would like options for books. We would like to invite Prince William County Water as well as the Board of Supervisor and School Board to offer a table to them, as well as participate in the read aloud. And then moving forward, as far as this document, the bolded items are the items that we felt were important conversations. However, I did hear questions regarding specifics to impact on staff and police hours. Would we like me to include that on the template for all future programs. Does anybody else have any items that maybe we didn't address that you may want to see answered for future program initiatives?
Not for now, but just
Okay,
budget line item makes sense.
okay, budget line item, okay.
And Emily's gonna think on it a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay,
She's gonna noodle on
Perfect.
the education.
sounds good. All right, well, thank you, council. Would it be possible for us to kind of get like a straw vote on the support of this program and we can move forward with advertising? Is that an acceptable thing to ask?
Sooner
this
the
time?
better.
Okay,
Mr. Wa-
So we,
Alex has
go ahead. Alex.
one more question.
oh, I'm sorry, yes.
So regarded, when it comes to possibility of using ARPA funds, if the events budget can cover it, I'd rather go against the events budget instead of dip into the ARPA funds. Does that make sense?
Talking about ARPA. I'm talking about the
Proffers.
proffer, the education proffer.
Ah, okay, never mind. But even with that, right?
Right, but it's worth investigating, right?
Okay.
See if we can use the money for that.
So do we want to go around the dais and offer yay, nay for advertising and then work out the,
I think you gotta
I-
advertise now if you're
Yeah.
gonna do it.
yeah.
I have no
Once-
problem.
One suggestion, council, staff can work with Mary on this. We can provide the updates. It could be included in your community liaison report. And then as you guys feel necessary, you can pull that report for discussion if you don't feel that it necessarily needs to be back on as an agenda item for conciseness. It's up to the council, though.
Is that agreeable to everybody?
Is everybody on board with that?
It's okay by me.
No objections.
Okay, so we'll include this attached to the rest of your report for
Perfect.
next Monday.
Okay. And
With
then
the updates.
advertising can start.
Okay, and just to be clear, the advertisement of the program can move forward.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you,
No objection.
thank you.
All right, thank you. So with that, we are going to go to our next agenda item, which is the monthly financial report. Roberto?
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. Excuse me. Okay, where did I put it? Here it is. I don't know, I don't have anything right now that comes to mind that's specific. As some of these things, we have some recent stuff that happened this week that will be shown in next week's financials. For example, we finally have gotten an invoice for the Robinson Cox invoice for the 2023 audit. We have also fully collected our meals tax for March. When I had to pull these numbers, we were still in the midst of collecting. So that'll be up there. I don't know if there's any specific questions on this,
Yeah,
this month's financials.
can we talk a little bit on projection going for the rest of the year, right? We got only a couple more months. So we're at what, 83% of the year,
Mm-hmm.
83.3?
Mm-hmm.
I did a little bit of math. And it looks like that TOT is gonna, if it stays constant, that TOT is gonna go over 300 easy.
Yep.
Right, you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Cigarette tax may end up going a little bit higher as well.
Cigarette tax is on track to hit the budgeted number as of right now. In fact, that's kind of one of the numbers too that also just showed up today.
Yeah.
So by looking at it, if tracking at it, what it is coming in, it should hit the 140.
Right. I'm gonna take bets. It's a little above. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you that currently meals tax, for example, at the same month at this point last year, we're 15% ahead. Obviously, another thing too, our business taxes are ahead from last year's by 1.5% as well.
Right.
So, yeah, projecting right now, we are doing well. But we'll see how the year ends, of course,
Right. Let's see how
it plays out.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So
Yep.
the bank stock tax comes in May, right?
Yes, May, June. by June 1st is the deadline where we're all supposed to receive it. So usually we receive them in mid-May,
Right.
but by June 1st at the latest is when we should be receiving our bank stock
What do you,
tax.
what do you think? What do you think we're gonna end up?
Uh,
You want to take bets on that one?
I haven't thought about that one, but we do have a lot of funds there. And we do have some good amount of funds in prior years, any other year we've had in the past. So we can talk about that in finance.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk
do
about that in finance.
All right. And I kind of think the sales tax receipts may end up being a little bit over. What do you think?
Yes, sales tax are coming in strong. That is one thing that we are coming in strong. And just 2 months behind on it too.
Right.
Currently at 2 months, I think we're at 3% ahead of that. So yeah, it is looking to do well.
All right. So I like the notes you put on in the margin there under comments, because that kind of helps communicate where we're at for each one, because it's not all coming in at the same time. So that's excellent. Next page, 4002 transfer from ARPA funds.
Correct.
We were kind of talking about that earlier with Steve Mulroy. What do you think we'll hit with that? How much do you think we'll be able to, plow back into the reserve, into the ARPA?
How much we won't use? About how much? I know, right now we have earmarked 836,586 for the park sidewalk. I could tell you that we're going to come under budget on that. I think we won't. I think we'll be around the 600,000 when the project, with the total end. As far as the park demo, I know there were some delays with the permitting and issues, so that may play a role into the contingency. So we may not see any savings there. But as far as the bigger project, which is a park sidewalk, right now I have projected with that contingency, we should have about 800,000, but it probably would look more around 900 if everything goes as well.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Then we can plow that-
leftover, 900,000 leftover, and that's just
And then we plow that back in, and that could help us with our next project.
correct. Yeah, yes, of
Okay.
course.
Um,
And just a reminder
yeah,
too,
please go.
remember, come July 17th, in July's meeting, I would probably want to have the discussion of what to do with the next $1.3 million that we have on a SADAR account currently. That's going to be that is the additional funds. As you can, in part, it has to deal with the amount of surplus that we were able to save in a couple of years, especially last year. Unaudited, it's over $1 million right now, but we were able to put those into a higher earning 6 month and then another 3 month SADAR. So that's something we'll offer discussion that will be accessible as well towards any of these projects.
Cool. Hey, I got a curiosity question.
Mhm.
Economic development, 60,000, tourism, traveling, marketing, the actual versus the budget.
Yes.
Why is that a little higher? It's just, I just couldn't.
Because they are collecting more revenues. So that's built upon, so that number you see on the budget, 96,429, is based off what we budgeted as coming as revenues. That's the 3/7 that goes back to the tourism. So that's the reason why you see it higher, but to offset, you'll see that we're also coming in higher in our revenues. So that's always built to come off whatever we would collect as revenue. So the town is never money out of pocket. It's always money that has been already collected.
Oh, good. You guys have any concerns on any items, line items, concerns, overages? I mean, we know, we've talked about other ones, but anything popping out? Nothing?
No, the only thing is, in talking with the TM, I do plan to talk to finance first before we do this, but I do plan on probably talking about setting specific monies aside to be on its own account that specifically targets CIP, meaning that instead of pulling from reserves on the budget going forward, it'll be more of CIP funds, and trying to establish a CIP fund so the town doesn't. So it's a lot more transparent in the sense that we're not using reserves and it's not showing that, oh, we're not it's not that the town is dipping into the reserves, it's just that we've had these money set aside specifically to address CIP funds.
Right.
So that's something I do want to, I'm talking to TM this year, I do want to set up. But before that, I want to make sure council's okay with it. And that would probably consist of just opening a completely separate account strictly for CIPs and how to fund it every year with the overages, a percentage of any surplus to go towards those accounts as well.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else? No?
Nope.
No? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to move on to the continued discussion for SUP 2024-002, Religious Assembly at 14600 Washington Street. Do we have any updates from staff?
Yes, good evening, council. Apologies for not including attachments in the agenda. In the back of the current agenda is stapled the staff report, as well as some satellite imagery that was captured by drones for your reference. Brief updates generally for the site. The landlord has paved over a few potholes and other issues that were with the existing impervious surface and lot surfacing. So that has been improved on. There was also a striping plan implemented to show all of the parking spots that are available now on site that have been striped, and that is what a lot of the satellite imagery shows. Generally speaking, this particular, on the very back, one of the ones in legal format that you have, the applicant has numbered spaces per their count. What you'll see is, and I'll describe it as the main lot, 96 spots in front of Zondras and Travai with 4 parallel to Cookies and Cream. They've accounted for 20 striped spaces in the rear lot by Suite 160, which is one of the locations they're proposed to operate from. And then in the side yard by the dumpster enclosures, 27 spots, 11 spots, 16 and 3. And 20, all on that one side, which accounts for, per their count, 204 spaces. It's our discussion amongst staff that, as you see in the rear lot, you have the two stacks of 10 spaces that account for 20. We're concerned still about maneuvering through that. So in our calculation, we've subtracted the 10 spots from there.
Right.
Generally speaking, there is some concern about the aisle width at those 3 spots by the loading bay on the side lot. Currently, I'm counting those 3 just for this discussion. So we have our parking count at 194 spots, just to reconfirm.
What about, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
But what about the 3 slots next to the building?
Those are the ones I was talking about where there's we haven't measured the aisle depth for that part, but for now I'm counting those as viable spots.
All right, okay.
Additionally, I re-provided the landlord's parking tabulation, which has all available tenants that are using the space right now, which would need or require 201 spaces. And so that's the main update for the parking lot that we have. If there are any questions related to parking, those are the main updates we have for council tonight.
So I think Councilmember Larson had, I think last time we met to discuss this, had asked about site plan, updates to site plan and so forth, right? So when they have to provide or go through an updated site plan in order to add these additional parking spaces?
Trying to answer this correctly. So there's some things on our end that we need to clarify with our zoning ordinance, because the use that they're going in and doing is in the existing building with the existing conditions. So what we're trying to figure out is at what level is this full site plan triggered? The way our ordinance is written, it's with any SUP that this is triggered. So I need to finalize that on my end this week, ahead of next week's agenda. I did have a meeting with the applicant and Thomas as well on Thursday. We made this very clear to them. They're also here tonight. Should council want to have any questions or discussion with them, we're more than welcome to have them come up. So I made it very clear with them that this is the section of the zoning ordinance, this is how it reads and states that if you have an SUP approved within 1 year, you need to apply for the site plan, and then that work needs to be commenced and completed within the 5-year timeframe. So we had that discussion. I also had that discussion with the property owner representative. And at that time, the property owner did not say one way or the other whether or not they were going to pursue a site plan.
Let's-
So I'll have more information for you by Monday night.
Okay. Let's assume they go ahead and submit us an updated site plan. Would the parking configuration with the 20 spots, would that something that would have been approved or allowed?
Not double parked, no, sir. There's no access to those back 10 spaces. And so aside from pulling through,
Yeah.
there's no access. Should a person in the vehicle in the front line have an emergency and, they need to get out now, they're going to have to wait and have somebody find keys, or they're going to take the path of least resistance, which is driving through the grass, going over a curb and getting out onto the road, whichever way they can find, because in a case of an emergency, that's what you're going to do. So I'm not counting those 10 as part of the parking spots. Thomas and I have spoke about this. We also spoke with the applicant. We're all in understanding together that of those 20 spaces provided, I am only considering the 10 that are closest to the building that are not blocked in. When I originally walked this site with Thomas and Connor, I felt that we were being told that the trailers were going to stay on the pavement and that the trailers were going to take those back 10 spaces and that only cars were going to be parked in front of them. So maybe that was a misunderstanding on my part. As we see today, there's 20 spaces marked out. I do have concerns that the way it's marked today, that other users, whether it be this use or another user, are going to use those back 10 and then drive on the grass to get out.
Okay, so after discounting those 10 spaces, as potentially at least maybe one out of the 3 spots or out of the 11, how many do they have enough spaces to accommodate the use that's being proposed?
So currently with the total of 194, if the tabulation by the landlord is 201, we're short a few, but
I'm sorry. Do you have the tabulation sheet I can look at? 1 second. Thank you. So, Thomas, if I may, the way I am reading this is based on all of your uses. So that's your second column in this table, the square footage that has been rented out to these tenants. The ratio in the fourth column is the ratio in our zoning ordinance today, is the number allocated, and then you have the number of parking spaces allocated. The way I'm understanding this and the way I have verified it with Thomas, what we're seeing is that they currently have 201 spaces based on their count. We're going to knock that down to 194, but they need 168.8 based on the uses they have occupying the building today, based on our zoning ordinance. So, yes, they would have adequate parking based on our zoning ordinance, what we require, because per the zoning ordinance, for a religious assembly, we require 1 parking space for every 4 seats in there. And we're assuming, based on what we've been given, we're assuming that there's going to be 120 users of that facility. Therefore, they need 30 parking spaces. What we need to keep in mind, and what I know the applicant would work with us on, is if the occupancy permit comes back any higher than 120, that changes the amount of parking needed. And that's where that occupancy load card that they're going to get from the county plays into our numbers. And what we're talking about right now is parking. Is everybody on board with that? Yes.
A clarifying question.
Yes,
just,
please.
Just on this point alone. The 168 is compliant with what they have existing today. Does that include the new tenant that is about to open up in there?
Yes, it does. So
It does.
If you look at the companies, what I have been told
Just making sure.
and what I'm
Yep, I
seeing
know.
is you have one space vacant and 161. The proposed use that you're hearing about tonight is 160. The brand new business who came to us in the last month, 2-month timeframe is Italia Performing Arts.
Yep.
Then you have Jazzercise in there. You have Truvai Brewery in there. You have Zondra's in there. You have Magellan Catering Company in there. You have QBE Office, VFI. 149 is vacant, but is assuming an office use. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, I'm sorry, that should say Battlefield. Jiu-Jitsu is in there. And then you have Cookies and Cream standalone. And the other vacant space is assuming an office. So for some other further clarification, if those two spaces, somebody were to come in next week and say, I'm opening up a new business here, is where I'm going. I'm in either 161 or 149. We, as the zoning and planning, would take into consideration, what are they applying for? What's their parking ratio? And what were we just presented? So if they're presenting that it's another restaurant, we would have to take that into consideration of what current parking is on site, how many spaces they have left over, and what they're proposing as a use to go in those two spaces. Same thing should there be turnover.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was present for the conversation with the landlord representative. And it was also my understanding that there would not be parking on the grass, that instead these trailers would be taking up the back portion of the double stacked parking spaces. So I'm surprised at what's being presented. I also wanted to kind of touch on the takeaway that I had from the conversation as far as the site plan went. It was my understanding at the end of that conversation that a site plan was not likely to be presented to council. That was my takeaway. And if that was not the understanding, has the landlord said otherwise to the tenant or to staff? Because again, it is a requirement of our SUP. That was something that was very clearly listed, that within a year it would need to be presented to us. And what I would hate to have happen is this SUP be approved, and then because that site plan is not provided within a year, that the SUP is then removed from the tenant. So have we gotten word or an update on that?
I have not been told otherwise. I would ask that council also direct that question to the applicant and have them come to the podium. and
I would
answer
love to hear
that.
if they've been told by their landlord. Is it?
Thank you. So about site plan, no. I had a discussion with the landlord, and the site plan work, I do not think so that's gonna be in place. I have the same understanding, and based on what I have seen and as presented by the staff, is in today's ordinance, it says yes, a site plan is required within 1 year of an SUP. Though in my very humble opinion, while it states in the ordinance, we're not changing anything in the site. The floor to area ratio is not being changed. So, but over there in the ordinance, it says clearly the applicant has to provide the site plan. In this case, the applicant is not the owner of the building. I cannot provide a site plan. That has to go through the landlord. He has to apply for it. So it seems like, and my perception absolutely is the current ordinance has been written with something in mind, where someone is building the space from ground up, not as a tenant going into a space which already exists without any changes. We're just moving into a space and requiring a site plan at this point. And even if it's been asked from landlord, I think I'm gonna be very direct about that. That's currently is gonna come on us, because ever since we started with ever since we started discussions with the staff. The first communication was 6th of September, which is about 7 months back. In 7 months, I think the landlord has been a bit patient with us. As of now, we go back, we tell them they need a site plan. He's not going to bear that cost. We're not going to be able to bear that. We are a religious organization, which is currently based on contributions and donations from people. We do not have a huge bank account, which can actually bear the cost of alone the cost of site plan as well as changes required by the site plan while implementing it. So if we are forced into providing a site plan, being a tenant of a space, not an owner, or not making any changes, probably that's pretty much a direct no to our SUP. If this is what the council wants to proceed with, I think we're going to have to take it that way.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a couple
Yeah.
questions. This is more for staff, but you might want to hang around. So my ignorance here. There isn't a site plan in place right now. So I'm kind of confused. Is that correct? There isn't a site plan in place at the moment?
That's correct.
Okay. So what we're talking about, if you approve an SUP, would be to amend the site plan. Is that correct? Or is that to just, are we saying that we would give them a year to develop a site plan after the SUP? But how do you account for the additional need without a site plan in effect? That's where I'm a little confused.
So there's not currently a site plan in place. They had previously submitted one and gotten up to the approval phase, and then we did not proceed forward. They did not proceed forward from there. So the way the ordinance is written is that if the SUP is approved, then within 1 year, they need to submit the site plan. So the way the language is reading is that if this is approved, a site plan needs to come in within 1 year to address the additional demands on the site.
Right.
And that's where this site plan would trigger curb and gutter, stormwater. It's going to have to go before VDOT. That entry exit point is going to be modified based on what VDOT pushes back on, frontage improvements with the sidewalk, et cetera. All of those are, the standard items addressed in the site plan.
And I think I heard you say earlier that they're not going to do an updated site plan.
That was what was told to me. That was the messaging that was shared. If they wanted to go off of their old site plan they would have to do significant modifications. So it might be more financially sound to do a new one than to try to redesign and re-engineer something that was really designed for 2 additional or 3 additional stories to be added on top of that structure.
And so I don't know if anybody else got the email, but I got an email that somebody was inquiring about meeting. It's public, right? It's FOIable.
That's correct.
About meeting to discuss their possible purchase and what they might do there at that property. And so I'm kind of curious how that would fit into this concept. I guess everything, if we did approve a SUP, that would be portable, I would imagine. But, I'm just wondering, I wrote back and I basically said the first point of contact would be the staff. Staff can give you all the information you need about requirements and what have you. My second comment was that I would not meet with them individually, that I thought it would make more sense if you met with the entire council so we all hear the same thing at the same time, and it would be a better forum for discussion, right, and feedback if that's what they're looking for, right? So I'll just go back again. So I'm not sure, how does that play into a decision here, or if at all?
I think what I would state is it maybe doesn't, but maybe it does. I know that's not the answer you want, but here's the reality of it is we as the town, we don't know if that interested purchaser has a contract. We've not necessarily seen the contract on it. They could just be in a feasibility study. So I think that the council needs to consider what is there today and who the applicant is in front of you and what they're asking for. Certainly, you know, we can ask, we can try to determine if the contract is going to move forward. I don't know how that specifically would affect the applicant before you tonight. I don't even know if this applicant has been informed that there's a possible contract on the property. So that's kind of where I would say maybe it doesn't necessarily play into it. I know that developer came and spoke with, you know, town staff. We had conversations. They asked what within the ordinance they were allowed to do. We had those conversations again. They told me they were in a feasibility study, so I was not given a up or down of how likely they were to proceed with purchase.
Okay. All right.
Just for transparency,
Yeah, go ahead.
Councilman, I will say that I did take a meeting with them in my capacity as business liaison. I felt it was appropriate to take a meeting. We did have a conversation. I shared this with staff, shared this with the mayor. It'll be in my business liaison report next week.
Okay.
I would say that my interpretation was it's very early stages.
Okay.
I'll say that.
So more like a feasibility.
Yes,
Make a determination
yes,
what we might agree to or not, perhaps.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just go back just a little bit more. So I'm still stuck on this site plan, but no site plan. If they had a site plan approved, what they've shown on this, does that comport with what they would have on a site plan? Or the existing site plan that's not a site plan?
Are you asking,
Sorry.
can you restate your
Okay.
question, Mr.
So
Basanello?
what they've laid out here.
Yes, parking,
There are 204 parking spots,
Uh-huh.
which we think is really 194.
correct?
Okay. If their site plan was approved right now,
Mhm.
would this comport with that site plan?
I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because I don't see on this what's before us. I don't see the exact travel aisle widths. I don't see the exact measurements of every parking spot. I don't see any handicap parking spaces identified. I don't see a loading zone specifically identified. I don't know the total square footage of the building to tell you if a loading zone is required. On the back corner of it, you have 3 spaces at the old loading zone that look very tight with the other aisle width. I will say, just a couple weeks ago, we had a lot of in-depth conversations with the fire marshal on a different SUP, and there were significant concerns that staff brought to council's attention regarding aisle widths and the emergency equipment being able to easily maneuver that site. And so the fire marshal said that he would not accept a site plan based on narrow aisle width. So I cannot say for certain that this in front of you would be approved on a site plan. Those are just some of the quick elements that we would be looking at to determine feasibility,
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
not to exclude the entire entry/exit point.
Right. I mean, there's other issues beyond.
Right.
I mean, you guys, where do you still stand where your recommendation was before, essentially, at this point? Or did you make a recommendation?
We did not make a recommendation at the time.
Sorry.
There was still a lot to figure out with this one. There was still a lot to discuss with the applicant. The applicant has come back to council and has answered all of the questions that you guys put before them. They have showed that with the drone footage that I requested our police department pull, I specifically requested that they look at 145, 215, and 315 based on times that the applicant gave me on a Friday of when their busiest service time was. I don't know if those are these exact photos in front of you. I would have to clarify that with Thomas. But basically what that showed is those 3 time stamps on the pictures is there was ample parking available and that there was not a significant reduction in parking based on the other users there. So we tried our best to present everything back that the council asked for. As it stands today, they've met the requirements. I don't know what else council might, want to see from the applicant, aside from figuring out this site plan portion of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
So Emily, normally when it comes to SUP, is it the property owner who comes and submits an application, or have we had, is it, or the tenant? I mean, I'm just a little bit.
It can go either way.
Okay.
It's not one or the other. In the past, I would say 75 to 80% of the applications for SUPs I've worked with, it's the applicant. It's the person who wants to go in the space. For example, we had Dr. Moon himself come in and he applied for his SUP for the bank building that sits there on Madison and Washington Street. Sometimes it is pretty standard though for the property owner to be here and be in support of their tenant or their applicant. But it doesn't.
And as far as Dr. Moon, as part of the process,
Mhm.
did they provide an updated site plan? Do they plan on providing one?
That was on a different zoning ordinance. So
Okay.
those previous SUPs, those were different zoning ordinance. We updated our zoning ordinance in 2022. And so for that example, again, different zoning ordinance. However, he did go through a site plan because for his use, he wanted to close off the drive-through and close the building and do modifications to include hooking up to Prince William Water. And so that triggered a full site plan. Your most recent example of a SUP that came before you that you guys approved was the Chick-fil-A. They will be required to submit a site plan because the changes that they are making, what they came in and requested, triggers a site plan to be submitted. They are changing the site.
Who reviews the site plan?
Myself, the town engineer, the town planner, as our internal town staff. After we do an initial internal review, we send it to our outside agencies. So you also have the fire marshal's office look at it, you have VDOT look at it, you have Prince William Water look at it. And depending on the scope of the site plan and the size, DEQ gets involved. If it's smaller than a certain acreage, our town engineer is able to do that review for DEQ.
Like anything over 2,500 square foot?
That's correct, yes. Anything over 2,500 square feet.
Yes.
So just more for staff. Because I'm new. So kind of with the site plan, it sounds like it's for if we're going to kind of engineer or build in, they're just renting to come into the building. So I'm confused why we need a site plan, but if someone could explain that to me.
The way the zoning ordinance is written, it does not clarify to say that a SUP that is going to only occupy interior space and meet the parking requirements wouldn't trigger a site plan. So it does not provide any clarification on the type of SUP. Therefore, in this situation, we have to read the ordinance as it's written word for word and make our observations off of that. And that's where we're stating that the site plan would be required based on how it's being interpreted.
Is there any way to make, this is for future reference, but any way to make updates to that
Absolutely.
ordinance just to,
Yes,
like if someone's just
absolutely.
moving in
So
to,
one example that I
Site.
can give you that's pretty simple. I say simple, but maybe not. Is if you had a resident who was doing a home occupation B. B requires an SUP in certain zoning districts. So if you had a resident moving in, doing home occupation B, they come up here, they apply for their special use permit, they wouldn't necessarily have to or trigger a site plan because everything they're doing could be completely within their household. And you may never even know. It could be your neighbor, and we don't necessarily know what business they're doing, but it might not impact the outside. We wouldn't need them to do a site plan in that phase because they're not changing anything in their yard, their driveway, their house. They're not expanding their house. So there's certain cases, but again, that's case by case. So that is why an SUP is required, is because it's case by case on the type of applicant, the type of business.
So
Thank you.
in some of those cases, that would be more the administrative approval though.
That's
right?
correct.
So you wouldn't have to come to council and go through the whole public hearing and approval process.
We do have site plans that are administratively approved because they don't trigger 4 criteria, one of which is expanding the impervious surfaces, the building footprint, not reducing green space, not changing stormwater. So there is options for administrative.
Thank you.
Alex, you.
Okay.
and then we'll go with-
So Emily, if I heard you correctly, you said that the applicant has met, other than the site plan, they met every other requirement?
Yes, they have. And council put forth your questions and they came back and they addressed all of your questions that you asked of them.
So the 194 parking spaces are sufficient for
Yes.
current use plus the proposed use?
Yes, if you go back to this tabulation sheet that was given to you, again, that outlines all of the different tenants. It puts in there exactly what the ratios are. We double checked the math on it. This is correct. So they currently require 168.8 parking spaces for all of the uses in the building. And what we're saying is that they currently have 194 spaces on site. So they would have an excess of approximately, what is that? 24-ish? 25.
Okay. In terms of, if, let's assume that on any given day, there aren't enough parking spaces, right? If the use is allowed, should we restrict parking on the grass? Does that make sense to make it a conditional? If we decide to, does it make sense?
Let's see, why not? I mean, that's council's discretion.
And then if we do that, and if the parking lot is full, what are you gonna, and what would be your instruction to?
Actually, that's a good question. Number one, I wouldn't want any restriction on parking on the grass because none exists today. I went to the parking spot over there. A lot of spots were empty. Someone was parked on the grass. If it's true that people are going to do it, even if there are spots available because they want to stay on the front side of the building, no one is stopping it. But having said that, what we're going to do about that is if we do not have enough space, we can always announce, like it's a religious organization, we have an announcement system in place. People, if there's no space over here, do not park on the grass. We can announce over there. But if you're going to put that as a condition, literally today, no one is stopping it. We cannot police it over there. We can announce, we can request, but we cannot police it. Same is the case that's happening today, right? Today, ordinance says you cannot park on the grass. But I have seen it. You have seen it.
Yeah.
People parking on the grass.
Yeah.
So cannot stop people on our behalf. Are people gonna park over there? We can make an announcement. We can request people, but then we cannot force them. So if you want to put that over there as a condition, we may not be able to meet it. Is all I'm trying to say.
How about parking in neighboring residential streets?
Parking neighboring residential streets, if there is public parking, they can park it. If there's no public parking allowed over there, we would not recommend that to park on those streets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So currently there is no restriction. So what you're saying is potentially they could,
If there's no restriction and none exists today, people can park over there. I think is their right to park over there. So we cannot stop them to, unless we are asked that, okay, you will not park on these streets. In specifically that we can do because, we can ask them not to. Again, this is an announcement system where we can say, where we cannot force them that, okay, are you doing it or not doing it? It will be difficult for us to manage to ensure any such restriction.
Okay.
We can request, yes.
okay. Question to the staff on page 6 of this attachment. There is a mention of may need use is 250 in terms of parking spaces, right? But at the same time, we're saying 167. So can you clarify
Yes,
that?
I'll make that correction in the updated agenda for the regular meeting.
So,
That was in reference to the previous site plan that had been approved but was never bonded and never constructed.
okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, quick question for staff. I believe when, we said when we were talking about this, that one of the concerns that we also had was not just parking, but also traffic flow.
Right.
And I do recognize that looking at the pictures and being on the site, that there is better, certainly spots that are being marked. The potholes have been filled in, and that you can see that there is some directional things, particularly at the entrance and I guess the beginning of the exit indicating, it's one way. But has there been any additional signage placed, or has the applicant talked about putting any other signage, or has the landlord talked about putting any additional signage in place that would direct traffic appropriately to prevent that?
A great question.
So
I mean, you want to take?
I asked it for staff, but
I
I'm
can-
certainly
I can
willing
do
if
it
you seem to
if
have
you
an
want.
answer, Sam.
Yes, so the signage has been purchased and that will be in place. We have seen that the landlord, he sent us pictures of that. He's going to make sure that those are in place, additional signage to ensure that there is a directional, as in there's no entry, this is one way and all that. And that's going to be placed at all places around to ensure that there are additional signage in place in addition to the markings on the ground.
Okay, thank you.
I think it would be helpful to have a diagram showing where those signs are. That would be, for us, I think that would be helpful. And I can tell you already that I observed a car going in the exit just yesterday.
Oh, that's right. This is.
But
this
that's
is-
not your problem.
No, I understand that.
Yep.
This is where I mentioned the grass situation as well, that we cannot police it. But yes, we can just put instructions over there
That's
for
right.
people to follow.
That's right. Okay.
So you
My-
want a diagram for the signs, kind of like a site plan, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be helpful.
You have additional.
Yeah, just
Go ahead, sorry.
I mean, maybe this is more of a question for whoever, is with regards to parking on the grass. Certainly this past weekend, one of the local businesses was encouraging people to park on the grass for their overflow. My understanding is that whereas we might not like that this is private property and not necessarily enforceable. Now, Chief, I don't know if that's a question for you with the police, or what's the enforcement capability in there, if that is in fact not allowed?
I believe technically there's a town ordinance on the parking in the grass, if that's what you're speaking directly of.
That's what I'm asking about. I'm being a little, I don't know, as I'm asking.
Yes, there is, my recollection, there is an ordinance. I would have to look it up and see what the portion is on it. But again, it's very hard to enforce that on that property. So it's not something that we would be able to adequately police.
Another one?
Yeah, that was all my questions.
Okay.
So thank you.
So regarding potentially, right, parking in the residential streets, yes, there is no restriction in terms of parking, right? But it just does not make it right for residential streets or, homeowners to face challenges with having, finding parking for visitors and so forth, right? I don't know if you would understand that part or agree with it, right? I just don't want us to get to that point, right? So if it does end up being a problem, is there anything that we can do about it, Emily? Let's assume they start parking on Blight Drive, right? On a regular basis.
Not if it's a public road.
Public, nothing that we can do.
The only thing that could be done is if they're parking in a fire lane or blocking driveways, but otherwise it's a public road, just like Hunting Path.
I was thinking the same thing, but the question I think for Blight would be, is there enough space to park along there as well as having 2 lanes? And I don't know if you'd have that kind of room.
Yeah, I was
the width
thinking
you
on
have.
both on the curb, the non-curb, to your point, on the non-curb, I don't know, there's no sign that says do not park here,
Right.
right? Currently.
I would go as far to say if we had a site plan and we showed curb and gutter on the QBE property, VDOT would be able to provide us a better assessment of if the road is wide enough to have parking on both sides of the public right of way. If so, then it would be marked as such. If not, you would have fire lanes as appropriate and curbs marked out with no parking to allow that 2-way traffic to still take place. But that would Unfortunately, I can't assess that. That's a VDOT thing, since they maintain that road.
Blight, right? It could be Green Hill Crossing,
Right.
right?
Certainly.
Any of the
Mhm.
residential streets, right?
Mhm.
Good luck trying to find spaces in Haymarket Station.
That's true.
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
I have a friend who has a driveway.
We, we speak about what triggers the fire marshal and what triggers VDOT, which is the site plan.
Mhm.
Is there a way to request
Yes.
them
So
to come and evaluate?
thank you for bringing that up. So with the Chick-fil-A SUP, I reached out because they are a partnering jurisdiction who does a review for us. And I asked for our fire marshal, Prince William County, to please take a look at this because it's his stations that services this property. And so out of a friendly request, they reviewed this SUP for us. They did that. They gave an assessment of it and they submitted that to the town as this is our general assessment based on what you provided us. So I could do the exact same thing with this. They would give that friendly, here's your assessment.
I feel like there's places in the parking lot itself that are of concern that I'm not able to evaluate that. So I feel like it would be beneficial to have that looked at.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, please.
Because I heard friendly assessment.
Yes.
So
Illegal.
that sounds like it has not a lot of strings attached to it, or is that just my reaction?
Maybe friendly is not the right word. The fire marshal, the building official, the folks down at Prince William County who do portions of our reviews, whether it be tenant layout reviews, issuing occupancy permits, doing fire marshal review for emergency ingress egress, they are always willing to help us out and take a look at something before it officially gets submitted to them for official review. They are always happy to work with us as the local jurisdiction who oversees the zoning of it. And they always sit down, they come here, they have meetings with us. Very standard practice. We can call them and ask them just about any question and they've never turned us away.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. We really need the fire marshal's input on these projects. I mean, I
We-
think
we
we'd be
do.
crazy not to.
And the way we see it is in a case like this, in a case like, our most recent SUP, when you have the fire marshal that you can get ahead of and say, hey, can we look at this? Can we brainstorm it together? Can we make sure that this works? It not only saves, us review time, it saves the applicant time and money. I mean, this is something that they did us a service and they looked at it and said, this isn't going to work. So if they had submitted something like that or something like this gets submitted in an official site plan capacity, it's automatically going to be reviewed, looked at, probably denied. They'll have to then go back and expend more money in civil engineering to get it fixed, resubmitted. And that's just time and money.
Right.
So it's truly a service.
Right. So just indulge me for a little bit more. I want to drill down just a little bit. I'll try to be brief. So when we submit these plans, does it go to building, development services, or does it go directly to the fire marshal?
So in this scenario, what happens is we do all of our site plan review.
Right.
We work with the outside agencies, they give their approval. Once we sign off and approve, they take their building permit and they go file for a building permit, and that's when the fire marshal's office gets triggered.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
All right. So he's in there afterward,
So
after you
Yeah.
guys are finished reviewing it, and then it gets sent over, and that's an automatic. They look at it from,
when it goes to the building official, it automatically gets through to fire marshal because they play a role in the occupancy portion of it as well.
that's good. That's important, and that's why I asked the question back in December, what does the fire marshal think?
Mhm.
And because I hadn't heard anything about that.
Hmm.
All right.
If I may as well, just to give a current example, it's not an SUP, but it is a site plan that was reviewed and approved by town staff. When Keedy Academy has been submitting their building permits or providing construction plans, the fire marshal requested another fire hydrant to be installed. And so that's an example of during the construction process, there was more information that was required of the applicant, and they adjusted accordingly and have installed that per that request.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Can I ask a follow-up
Yes.
question? So based on the outcome of the Chick-fil-A SUP last meeting, there was a mention of a VDOT standard and Prince William County standard. It looks like there are two different standards that they possibly, there was a mention of that whatever that they provided, the site plan conforms to VDOT, but not Prince William.
Can-
The parking spot.
Can I follow up with you on that since it has to do with that other application? But I do have, and I just need to look it up. There was a clarification after the meeting. And I want to say that it was Prince William County standards was followed in
Okay.
all scenarios.
Okay,
But I will follow up with you since it was on the other application.
great, thanks.
But we adopt Prince William County standards. We have that. Okay.
Matt,
Sorry,
you
Matt,
had a
thank you.
question?
I just want to make sure that I want to understand this, and I'll kind of try to be as simple as I can. So the applicant has submitted for the SUP. They've, come back and they've answered a lot of questions. There have been some improvements made to the property. And, we know we're talking about the spots and things like that. But my understanding is that if we were to approve the SUP, the next step for the applicant would be to go get the certificate of occupancy, correct?
To apply to the building department for their tenant layout is what we call it.
Correct. However, our ordinance says that within 1 year, somebody needs to file a site plan with us.
That's correct.
Okay. So the applicant, to be clear, the applicant has done what they can. It is up to them and the landlord, the property owner, to determine inside of a year to incur the cost and the research and everything that goes along with it for the site plan. All right. If in 1 year, and I'm talking a hypothetical, I like to be optimistic and think that, okay, we approve an SUP, they go forward, they get their CO, and within a year, we're going to get a site plan from somebody. I'm being optimistic. I'm being positive. I'm choosing to think about this as the art of what's possible, not what we should be blocking. If that's the case, it's what happens in a year if there is not a site plan submitted.
The way I read it in the ordinance is the use would have to stop and the space would have to be vacated.
Okay,
So that's a risk to the applicant.
that's a risk to the applicant.
That's the way I read it. Again, as I mentioned previously at the beginning of the discussion, I want to come back to you Monday night with, more concrete answer on this, but that's the way I'm reading it.
Okay.
And we're still waiting for the fire marshal. You're going to touch base with the fire marshal?
I can touch base with Chief Smolsky.
And we can also make this a time constraint SUP too, if
Yes.
we wanted to approve it. We
You
could
can do
approve it
conditions.
yearly. We could put times on it, so.
I'm trying to think about this, personally. So I'm not going to be here next week, unfortunately. However, just to state my opinion, I think when we have an applicant who has, in good faith, worked hard with us, and is doing kind of what they can within their abilities, and have been able to talk to their landlord to get at least something done. I would hate for us to not be supportive or deny something because we believe something may or may not happen in a year. If we have legitimate concerns about parking, about traffic flow, about the impact, that is completely relevant. I just don't want us to go down the road of saying whether or not we believe something is or isn't going to happen within a year. I don't think that's fair to the applicant. That's my 2 cents.
Mayor, can I follow up with
Yes,
one thing?
please.
To answer Vice Mayor Gallagher's question, that ordinance on the parking does exist, but it is a zoning ordinance.
Because they don't.
So it would not fall under my purview, it would fall under Thomas's.
Got it.
Thomas was able to look that up for me really quick.
Thank you. I appreciate that
I
clarity.
believe to add further to that, the parking on the grass is restricted to how many hours it's parked on a residential property, and it really falls on a residential property. And it is extremely hard for myself as a zoning administrator to go out, document it, and get it all done within, I want to say it's a 12-hour period or a 24-hour period that they can park on the grass.
Not like my HOA trying to catch me with my garbage can out after 6
Yes.
p.m.
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Did you just say, am I correct? Did you just say it falls on as a residential property?
No. The way the parking on the grass is written in our zoning ordinance, I believe it's only restrictive on residential
okay.
properties. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What it, basically how it reads out is that your neighbor can't go park in his front lawn for more than X number of hours. And if he does,
Okay.
then it's a zoning violation. But it's really hard to catch that.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, and that wouldn't, well, never mind.
So the only thing that I heard was we were looking for the placement of the signage that is going to be directional. Is that what it, okay.
I have diagram for signage. We just clarified the parking on the grass, and then we need to reach out to Chief Smolsky and see if he could provide a little weigh in on what's been striped
Okay.
for aisle widths.
Okay.
Say a couple of things. So the diagram for signage, if you do a picture, updated picture after the signage is up, would that work?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, but will it be done before Monday?
Hopefully, yes. If not, then we can do an updated picture. Second thing is in terms of the site plan, right? So going back to if there was not an SUP, right? If there was a regular tenant coming in, right? Would that have triggered a site plan? No. So like, do you folks think this is fair on the applicant just because we are moving into the space and we require an SUP because we are a religious organization, we're not changing anything? So is
But when I asked that question, right, whether it's normally the applicant or the landlord who submits an SUP, right? As you heard Emily, it could be, one or both, right? It could be basically a tenant, it could be a landlord. And usually, as you heard her in the past, even tenants have submitted or provided a site plan, right?
if you were to make changes, right? Yeah, if you were to make changes, if you were to add structure to it, absolutely, right? Like in the last working session, we were here, Chick-fil-A was talking about adding a lane and they provided this site plan. That makes perfect sense. In our case, we're just occupying a building, right? It's just like a rent that we are going to pay. We're going to occupy the building. Just because we are a religious organization, we have to go through this process of SUP. Else, like if we were a regular organization, we would have just gone and we would have been in there by now, right?
Yeah.
7 months ago. So it just seems very unfair that we have been treated a little differently versus a regular tenant, just because we have to go through the SUP process. You're not changing anything. It just feels very unfair that this is happening, right?
Council, if I may explain a little bit of how our zoning ordinance operates. So we have a use chart, and this is for everybody's educational moment right now. We have a use chart in our zoning ordinance, and that determines if a type of use is a by right use or if it's a special use permit request. So different zoning districts have different types of uses, and therefore, if we had a business that was a by right use in the B1 zoning district and they came in and they wanted to apply for a zoning permit and a business license at this site, if they're in a by right category, they would be permitted to do so. That is an administrative approval on my end because the town of Haymarket has preset what those by right uses are and what the SUP uses are in our last modification of our zoning ordinance. When we went through and we determined our SUP uses, we thought about, and this is very standard, we go through the list of what types of uses there are, and we think about what are the impacts that that type of use is going to have on a property in this zoning district. And so in this case, when you have any type of assembly, whether it be a religious assembly or a non-religious assembly, but you have a large gathering of people, we want to take into account the traffic impact. We want to take into account the number of parking spaces available, the safety of the site when it comes to the entry and the exit point. And so that is why this type of use is triggered as a special use permit request. We do have other ones. For example, a medical office would be triggered as a SUP in other zoning districts because we want to know what type of medical office is it? What additional demands are they going to have on that site? Is this a 24-hour urgent care that's going to have a large volume of patients coming in? Is this going to be a space that has an ambulance that needs to come often with fire and rescue, right behind somebody's residential house? So those would be factors that we look at. So when it comes down to whether a site plan is triggered or not, the site plan is being triggered because this is a special use permit request. The reason this is a special use permit request is because it does not fall in our by right use category. It's a larger assembly, and we want to clarify what parking is available, and the other impacts as I went through. Does that answer the question, or does that further provide some information? This is not based on because it's a religious assembly. If you came to me, and I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I can't think of another SUP request in the B1. Thomas, could you look that up, please? An SUP request in the B1 that's not religious assembly? This is based on it being an SUP. This was preset.
I totally understand that. My only thing is, right, so like you mentioned, parking is a concern, traffic is a concern. We have addressed all of those concerns, right? So far, like, we've been working with you folks for 17 months. We've been trying to address all of those concerns. Now, the only thing that boils down to is site plan, right? The site plan is a big thing that we can't do on our own because site plan is for the whole building, right? So the owner has to buy into it. Like, they have to do this, they have to bond it, they have to go through that whole process. And just for just one tenant, they probably won't do it, right? So, and that's kind of where we get stuck because you're just one tenant, right? You want an occupancy permit of where we're going to be, we'll provide that because that's in our control. We can provide an occupancy permit because that's within us, right? Site plan is for the whole property. So it just feels like we are trying to bind two things together, a special use permit with something that's broader than a special use permit, something that covers the whole property versus just the special use permit. And similarly, like some of the other things, right? Parking on grass. Who knows whose car it is, right? If someone is parked on the grass, it could be from one of the restaurants. Like, so we can't really control those things. So we'd be happy to announce those things, but we can't control those things, right? Because we are not the only occupant on that property. If we were the only occupant on that property, that would have been a completely different story.
And we do appreciate you being here this evening, so thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you. All right, anything else?
Yeah,
No.
yes, question. TIA, is that something, when is that triggered?
Typically, we get TIAs with rezoning applications. There's not an exact trigger on a SUP that would require a TIA.
Okay.
One more question.
Yes.
Sorry, last question.
No, go ahead.
Just because I'm trying to figure it out. So when someone submits an application, are they given the options of the by rights, SUP? I think you listed one more, or is it just like a general kind of, I don't know how that, I'm just for my education, so I know.
So in
how
our
it
zoning
works.
ordinance, the use chart is listed, so it's on the website, it's a public document. And so sometimes what we have happen is a developer or a business owner comes in and says, Emily, I'm looking at this property. This is what I want to do here. Is this a match? And so we go through our use chart. We figure out the type of use they're doing. Is it by right or is it an SUP? And then we talk about the two different scenarios of how to apply. Sometimes if it's an SUP, they might go elsewhere and look for another space, or by right, they can go ahead and submit. So usually we have what I like to call a pre-application meeting, and we go through all of that. Sometimes business owners, they already know that they want to be here. And so maybe they've even already signed a lease and they come in and they apply for their zoning permit and their business license because they've done the homework themselves and determined that it's a by right use. In this scenario, we have an applicant who knows it's a special use permit request, so they're coming and applying through that avenue.
Additionally, as Emily requested me to look up the use chart as well, I'll give you an example of what Special use versus by right permitting. This is just at the top of the use chart, education facility, primary, secondary. In residential areas, it's approvable via special use permit. So each case by case, depending on those residential zoning districts, would be applied for via special use. It is by right, however, in the two main business districts that we have. Other examples of B1 zoning districts that would, or uses that would require a special use permit in the B1 zoning district are education facility at the college or university level, an emergency shelter, an outdoor gathering, a parking facility, public assembly, which religious assembly falls under, recreation facility, public, those kinds of things.
All right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're good?
Nothing else from me.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate seeing you, gentlemen. All right. So we are going to move on to the fourth item on the agenda, which is our policies and procedures and the draft on the Code of Ethics. Kim, can you lead us in this discussion?
First, I want to apologize on your agenda. I thought I had the red line and the clean version of the policy and the procedures. And for some reason, the red line version didn't come over. So I have provided you the red line version tonight at the dais and also the red line version of the Code of Ethics at the dais. Yes, so that is the red line version and your agenda is the clean version. So you asked me to make adjustments to the policy and procedures. I want to bring to your attention that, and I do have a memo on page, and I'm sorry, I got to get.
No. Yes.
Yes, packet page 11 is my memo. And it is basically, you adopted a policy in November of 2023 on your payables, payable and receivables. And in that resolution, there was a definitive direction to continue to have 2 finance liaisons, and that was voted upon on your by resolution when you adopted your payables. So if you decide that you want to change from going from 2 in your policy and procedures, that you want to change it to go down to 1 liaison, we will also have to change this payable that you adopted in 2022.
Before Councilwoman Ramirez left, she left a note in specifically addressing the liaison position. May I read it, or would you like
Absolutely.
to read it? It states, per discussion at last meeting, council majority spoke in support of 2 liaisons for the finance liaison positions. I acknowledge and accept the majority's position. Thank you, Councilwoman Ramirez.
Okay.
Was there further discussion on the liaison?
Okay.
Anything? No,
That for me.
Can I make a suggestion?
of course.
Maybe we table the policy and procedures further discussion until we have a chance to review the red line.
The red line? Mhm. Yeah,
If that's
fine.
okay.
Thank you.
That's what I would prefer you to do, is take your red line version home and go against it with the clean version on
Okay.
both the Code of Ethics and your policy and procedures, because they're both in there now,
Okay.
for you to come back. And I will put this on the agenda for Monday night with a draft resolution in case you're ready to adopt next week.
Okay. If I were to make a suggestion, may I make one? It's just a technical one.
Yeah.
And I like the descriptions of the liaison positions and the community liaison. It says business. If we would all be open to removing business for the business liaison, and then it's community. Let me grab it real quick. Sorry.
Where are we? Yeah, what page?
It's page 43. So when it says local government and its residents, comma, businesses, comma, and community organizations, I feel like removing businesses would help streamline the business liaison position and the community liaison position.
Agreed.
And then with the finance liaison, I just want to make note that I do like that we're supplying an agenda within that so that it's public, everybody can see that that's what it is.
I'm sorry.
What was that?
the comment?
So I like the fact that we outline what the agenda is for the finance meetings on page 39.
Yes, yes. No. I just. I was trying to
Roberto's
find-
agenda. Confirm it, right? Right, Roberto?
We don't post that agenda.
No, but it,
Okay.
in here, it's nice to have that kind of outline,
Okay,
but yes,
okay.
we don't post it. But I did like,
Right, right, exactly.
And it is reported on monthly.
I did attend a financial liaison meeting, last Wednesday?
Yes.
Don't tell me that. That means
Days ago.
I'm losing my days. But very informative, Roberto, Alexander, and Joe over here.
The other guy.
It's the other guy. Very informative, was very detailed, and
You're gonna tell
Thank
them we
you.
make all the decisions. prior to-
sign all the checks and do. No, it was very.
Go there.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in that meeting. Just let you know that. But thanks for having me, Roberto, Joe, and Alex.
No problem.
I'm-
You're welcome at any time
Yeah.
to participate, you know.
all right. So we will compare the red line to what we have, and then we'll put it on the agenda for next week.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so the next item is electronic voting information and discussion.
Yes,
Emily,
very easy.
please.
This is informational items. So when we switched our minutes and agenda system from our previous Granicus to our new system, which is hosted by Civic Plus, one of the things we asked for, again, this was over a year ago, is we wanted an option for electronic voting. So what we've been working on is trying to get our system up, running, and functional and seamless. And then we're going to start implementing the electronic voting system. So what we're going to start doing at each meeting is when there is a vote, whether it is a call to order, roll call, or a yay nay, what we'll do is you'll have a electronic device, your computer will be in front of you, and you can vote on that system. Once everybody's vote is in, Kim can see it on her screen, and then she will live share it, and then she'll read back how the motion passed, failed, or died on the table. She can also read back how everybody voted. It will be displayed on the screens here. So Kim's kind of pulling up an example. We're gonna have the ARB and the Planning Commission practice that starting in May. And so they'll practice May and June with our clerk staff, and then council will start that at our July 1st, whatever meeting in July is our first one. That's when you'll officially start it. We will practice the work session ahead of time for all of you to have that. We'll do a 15-minute kind of refresher practice at the beginning of your July meeting. So like 6:45, we'll do a little practice so everybody's comfortable with how to do it.
I don't know if you all can see the TV screen over there,
No.
but if I move this toggle switch over right here to voting, that gives you now the opportunity to vote. And you can vote on your computer, you can vote on your iPhone, your cell phone, iPad, any electronic device that will get a internet.
So we would,
Just a URL location.
Yep, I'll give you the you will establish your own password and you'll log into this Municode, pull up the meeting, and there we go.
Passwords.
Yes, you will have to establish a password that you will remember.
like right here.
Kim, lots of questions.
It can be easy password.
Can we use two-factor or multi-factor authentication, please?
I knew he was gonna ask it.
Yeah, going to security.
I'm just, Kim,
gonna
don't
say.
worry.
Sure.
Is there an option?
We'll look, there's a security option on there, so we'll look under the security option of what additional, I'm sure they have some type of two-factor or something of that nature to secure it, yes. We would also know, keep in mind, we would also know that if you guys are all sitting here and you're seeing a vote that, you voted no, but really you're sitting there clicking yes, then you can say that. You can say, my vote didn't take the way that I'm voting. Obviously, we would stop voting that way for that meeting. We would then start relying on our old-fashioned voting.
Will we have visibility? I mean, right now, I don't think any of us can really see the screen very well.
I can bring it down on the screen.
So
Yeah,
you'll
I
have,
think if
you'll
we're-
have the laptops, we'll bring the screen down. That'll be the more common practice. We'll have the screen down. It'll be up on this screen so that you guys can all see it. And then once everybody's vote is in, that's when it's gonna show. It's not gonna show as
Then
you're
this is
clicking
m-
back and
This is
forth.
me.
Okay.
This is what
Okay.
this is what I see. Nobody else can see this but me.
Okay.
So will it show the motion up on the screen?
It will, if I typed the motion in here,
That was
it
my
would show it.
question. That was
Okay.
my question.
And then, of course, the mayor doesn't vote.
Unless there's a
Unless
tie.
there's a tie.
So maybe I don't need to
Just
remember my
remind you.
password.
No, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You
But
still will have to get a
I'm
password.
Do not
also-
have
We
Yes.
still need you to have passwords.
You'll
just
still
so
have
you
to have
because
a
there's
password to
eventuality
remember.
Oh,
that will
absolutely. Go ahead, Matt.
Closed session voting's affirming, what was
Right,
discussed.
exactly.
Right, she'll still have to.
All right, so I guess I'm hearing the questions about security of the
Mhm.
system. Right?
Mhm.
So this is an open source. This is a program that we pay for.
Mhm.
All right, what are we paying for this? I'm curious about that. Is it like
It's-
a monthly thing? Is it an annual?
Part of our,
It's annual part of our agendas and
Meeting and
minutes.
agenda software.
So it's Civic Plus?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the software
Okay.
run through Civic Plus.
Okay, all right, cool.
And Kim can let you know other jurisdictions
Yeah.
that you use this type of voting system.
It's like
and-
playing Matchbox on
Yeah.
the screen, right?
Yeah.
You ever
And
play with your
Jeopardy.
kids?
You said it's open
And
to the public can see our votes, is that what you said? In terms of,
Once I publish it.
once it's
Publish it.
Once I
published.
go over to this toggle over here that says votes not published, I move that toggle over and it says votes published, and that's what'll show the vote.
show where do they see it?
Stream?
The stream on YouTube?
It'll show up in the minutes and
It'll
it'll
show
show
up
up
in the
and if they
minutes.
sign up into, they can sign up and see the.
The public
published
can
vote.
also sign up into the same system to
They
see
would
the,
sign in, let me follow up on that one.
I think
They'll
it's
see
just,
it.
I think
Yeah.
it's just on the streaming.
Yeah,
as part of the YouTube, they'll be able to see it integrated with somehow with the
Yeah.
YouTube, okay? Okay.
And that's kind of the example I was thinking, like C-SPAN.
That's what I was thinking, C-SPAN
Yeah.
with their like yay nays and.
And we had originally thought to do something similar to some of the other bigger jurisdictions where you have a button and you push the button, but then you need a screen in the back, and those systems are a bit more pricey. If that's ultimately the desire of council, we can go that way, but this is a feature in the software we already purchased.
Let's try it that way.
I feel like this is a
Yeah.
good start.
Okay,
We can talk
Just
to our
'cause you don't want a
finance
password.
liaisons on Wednesday.
Right.
I do have a
Spending
real
more
question,
money.
though.
Well, no, I mean, if it's part of the package, that's great.
It is.
You know, I guess security is a concern, a question,
So,
secure
yeah,
is it?
from a security perspective, right? It's going to be included in our meeting minutes in terms of how each council member voted, right?
Will it be that format?
But are you going to be relying on the system, how our votes are recorded, or are you going to be at the same time putting, taking a note? Okay, because let's assume some bad actor, nefarious actor, was to
yes,
be able to compromise the integrity, right?
yes,
Change our votes after the fact, right?
correct.
Then as long as we're not relying on that to establish how each
Yes.
of us voted, right? Solely relying on that, then I think we should be okay, right?
Yep.
So you'll have
Because
your-
you would read it,
Yeah.
read it back into the minute.
But also she'll be taking notes and then she's gonna include in meeting minutes. So we have that historical view, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Sorry, this is mostly just a question. I don't know how it works. Do we need to have anything in like writing or put anything in like I don't know, just kind of, I'm trying to think of like publicly to know or how it's going to be used or put out there. Like in our, yeah, ballot box
Don't worry
almost.
about the paint, Chats.
So
You know what I mean? I don't know if there's
Like a notification that we're.
not even a notification, like anything we have to put in our, like our, kind of in our, not our laws or anything like that, but just kind of,
Policies and procedures?
yeah, kind of maybe. Do we have to put it?
We can put a blurb in there about, electronic voting and that the procedure is that a motion is called. And once the motion is called, we can set a procedure, right? You call a motion and the clerk repeats back the motion and is told, okay, council, cast your vote. You cast your vote. Once all members present have voted, the vote goes live on the screen, and then the clerk reads back how the vote carried. And so like we can set a
Yeah.
procedure, and so then it's all verbally stated on record. You're hearing it out loud, because I know our citizens are used to hearing, okay, Passanello, Lawson, and you hear the vote cast verbally, but we could still accomplish that by having the clerk read back the vote and say, the vote passes 4-2 with these members in favor and these members against. And then
Yeah.
that's your time, council, that's your time. If you,
Oh, wait a minute, I made a
There's the
mistake.
loophole.
Oh,
There's the loophole.
yeah. So, but that's your time to correct it. Otherwise, that's how the vote would.
it was just
Go.
more for like transparency and for like,
Still better.
when I'm not on the board, it
Yeah.
still has something in your policies and procedures.
Well,
Sorry to create more work for you.
Look at it this way, you'll get practice before we do.
So just noting, we're talking about our policies and procedures, and we're able to, section 6.10 says method of voting. I think maybe a statement, we should add in here.
Okay,
That's on page 37.
okay,
I think adding method of voting, I think this is a great point, that
okay,
this is how we vote now.
okay.
I mean, if the majority of council is not in favor of this style of voting, we can keep with what we have. We just felt like this was kind of the next step up, and it would help everybody cast your vote all at the same time. We're not waiting to go around the dais. The same one person doesn't always have to cast their vote first, and the same one person doesn't always have to cast their vote last. Kim's not having to worry about who went first last time and who goes last this time. So we were just kind of thinking that way everybody votes all at once.
If we put it in the policies and procedures and there's an issue, we flex out of it.
Right.
But but at least it's there.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's awesome. Okay, are we good?
I think it's a great idea.
I like
do.
it.
I mean,
I
it
like
takes the calculation out of it.
All right.
Who's gonna lose their
Look,
password
they-
first?
They got all dressed up for photos and now they're. Our last agenda item is the fiscal year 26 budget work session. Roberta.
So the budget in front of you is what's been noticed. The public hearing will happen next Monday, May 5th. Nothing has majorly changed on the budget from the last discussion. Again, the proposed budget is, some of the main factors are that it's maintaining a flat tax rate, 0.105. I'm sure Mr. Pastanello knows, but the county has reduced its real estate tax, but not necessarily done the same for all the other taxes. There'll still be an increase for overall in the county. And our budget is still proposing to keep the same flat fee, the flat rate. It's also right now currently funding all of its CIP using the expected revenues, budgeted revenues. Yeah, I don't know if there's any specific questions on it before the discussion, but on Monday, the town manager and I do plan to go and presenting a presentation slideshow during the public hearing. and obviously take any question or concerns from the public that day.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
res-
let Alexandra.
Oh, go, please.
So regarding the financial forecast presentation, right? I asked about, specifically about the property tax, what percentage of our revenue is going to be is coming from property tax and so forth, right?
Mhm.
And again, I'm not trying to say that this study should influence things, right? But based on my calculation, we're talking, I think, what was it, 600 some $1,000? I forget. That's about $100,000 above the proposed budget, right? Meaning about 25K per year. Yeah. So, and again, what there is, the study is indicating that even with 100K increase in property tax over the next 4 years, right? Then we should be in good standing, financial standing, right? I don't know if you agree with my assessment, right? What I'm trying, basically what I'm trying to say is I don't think we need to maintain the increase that we have or that we're planning to in order to stay at a good financial standing. I don't know if you agree with that.
I mean, I've made my case. I think we've talked on our finance meetings plenty of times about this. The report's 5 years. And I'm thinking, in 2017, when I came on board, the current debt obligation was already ongoing. We're now just 8 years later than I started. It's finally, starting to pay that off. I think long term, the continuation of reducing taxes in the long term could hurt the town. As you can see in that report too, you saw that currently, I think it was a 65% on meals tax. And by 2030, it'll be 67%. I think my conversation has always been to council and to finance that, the town currently is seeing an increase when it comes to new businesses, new homes, but at some point it will plateau. At some point it will not be able to build any more homes. One of the things about homes too is that residentials are probably one of the more things that we have to service the most, as well as businesses. There will only be so much space before businesses, won't be able to come in here anymore either. Obviously, the tax rate will be up to council how they want to proceed with it. I would recommend to keep it flat as per the report as well. You can see how much we've reduced it already in the past 4 or 5 years. The county has done their part, but the county has also increased, other taxes that they have. And yet again, they have the data centers. We don't get anything from the data centers. I think there's a misconception out there too that, the town is allowing these data centers to come through. We have no say in it. We don't receive any revenues or profits on it. That is all county driven. And again, I think we have projects that are coming down the road that we would love to address. And unfortunately, it's been all on the town's own doing that we need to, execute some of these projects. Maybe a conversation with the county down the road is something we should be doing. But as of right now, we have to focus what the town can do for itself. But again, it is up to the council when it comes to the rate. I have a budget that will work with the current rate, and there's ways that we can make it work if we have to reduce it as well too. If the council wishes to continue funding some of these expenditures, there's always reserves. We have a very healthy reserve to do so. So again, if you ask me, no, I would not like to see it to be reduced. But again, it's council's decision.
So regarding future possible assessments, property values, we have a realtor here, right? So it doesn't mean that that's going to be reality, but what is the forecast for our area in terms of property value
I would say overall increasing.
increasing? Any, are they talking about percentages? No, range? Okay. The reason I'm asking that question is, as you know, as property assessments values increase, the revenue is going to also increase, right? It's going to keep up with that, right? But in terms of, this is addressing your plateau, right? Maybe we might get there. Of course, there might be a downturn at any given point, right? But I don't know when and if we'll ever be at a maximum in terms of assessment values, right?
Yeah, and one thing I could tell you, being here is, I think after COVID, there's a massive increase overall for assessments, not just here, but everywhere. But as we share in finance, some of the homes that have been here for a while, as you yourself, your home, have not changed much. The biggest increases, I believe in the report, that $90,000 worth of the real estate is all the new homes. So when it comes to the increases, the majority of the homes here have kind of already hit that where it's kind of slowing down a bit, at least, but with the newer homes, obviously they're seeing, their homes are assessed at a higher. I mean, some of these townhomes are assessed higher than the single family homes that have been here for years. But yes, I mean, the potential of increasing, yes, it could be, but as of right now, my recommendation would be not, just because since we've been here, we went from a 0.146 to a 0.105. And as well as we do, eventually our expenditures, which we try to control as much as we can, but there's certain projects that we can't control the contractor's pricing. We have to also think about that too. It's not just the surplus we're getting, but once we start executing these projects, we're also minded to what the contractors are charging with the inflation as well.
I mean, I'm not trying, I know we're getting, for whatever property tax we're paying within the town, above and beyond where we're paying the county. I know we're getting services from the town, right? Some of that cost is being offset by trash and recycling, definitely, right? But it would be ideal, if we can I think we can, I know we are in good financial standing, right? If we can not try to limit the increases. And again, to your point, for example, I did the calculation on my house. It was what did I say, about $70, right?
Mhm.
I know we're fortunate enough we can afford that. Maybe there might be some who might struggle with that, right? But if we can make it work, again, if we were not in a good position, right, financially speaking, one thing, but I think last year, what, $1 million surplus this year, around 300,000, it could be more than that, right? But anyways.
Any additional questions?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, well, figured.
absolutely. I think we have to be careful. First of all, let me just say that Roberto and staff do a great job. We'll acknowledge that. And his position is balancing the budget and making sure we can pay our bills. I get that. Reducing values, I disagree with that term. That's not the proper term. We've done equalization, I believe, one time, just once in my 5 years back on council. So we have increased our revenue from real estate taxes. So let's be clear on that. And if we go with the 13.6% that is proposed for residential and business real estate tax, we're talking about a 44% increase over that period of time. So what I would like to propose to council, and I think we can make it work, is get away from the drops and the spikes, right? Do something a little bit more even, whether it's tied to CPI plus another number or whatever. Frankly, I don't think we need to, and I don't think we can't afford 13.6%. I think we could do something a little smaller, maybe a 5 or 6% increase, and maybe look at an annual increase that is pegged to inflation. All right, that's what I think. I would, as it stands now, I would vote against 13.6%, even with all the other good stuff that's in that budget, because I don't think you can say, well, $25 is not much or $50 is not much. It is something to other people, especially when you look at the cumulative nature of the county plus us, right, and what we have to pay. So it's not that simple. And I think the other thing is we have to look at all of the taxes that we pay as an individual in the town, as a resident. I mean, we're paying utility taxes, communication taxes, real estate taxes. If you have a business, you're paying B-poll taxes on top of what the county charges us. So I think there's room to play with the numbers a little bit. And Roberto presented that, I think, last week. I think we can reach a compromise going forward. I don't think we need the full 13.5%. I think it could be fairer. And frankly, it is a good attraction for people coming into town, right? When they realize that, oh, you mean I pay a town tax? I've had people say, I didn't realize I have to pay a town tax, especially people looking at home buyers looking to come into our community. Not a lot of communication is made in that regard. And so when I say, yeah, you pay a home tax, but you get police service. We have our own police department. That's a major benefit. You get trash service, major benefit. You have the ability to go to town and get permits and what have you that are facilitated by a town staff. But still, I think people don't realize that additional tax can be a burden for some people. And so for me, I believe we can reduce that level somewhat. Do I think we should equalize? I'd love to equalize, but I don't think we have to do that. I think we can afford that going forward. That's where I stand.
Anybody else?
And can I just make one more statement? though? I think what I'd like to do at the next work session is to discuss a proposal on that. And we make a motion. I'd love to make a motion. If I get a second, we vote it up or down on the tax rate.
The next work session.
Or, at the following regular meeting, perhaps. But discuss it at the next work session. Because we may or may not get feedback on Monday.
Yeah.
And my prediction is we probably won't get a lot of feedback on the tax rate, to be honest with you, because I'm not sure people really know it and understand it.
What is your
Thank you.
question, Justin?
No. I kind of agree with Joe with the kind of going with kind of ups and downs. But what Roberto has put together with the tax rate now, I think he's been doing this since COVID? You've been putting this together? Prior.
8 years.
So I know what I'm new to this, so I'm still trying to look back at previous budgets and everything, but it's, he got us through COVID. That's a huge thing. And with this, if he's proposing a flat tax rate for this proposed budget, and then maybe on the next one, we go with what Joe says, but I think he's looking for the future of the town, of what projects we have coming up and where we need to be at to also grow as a kind of community.
Alexander.
Yeah, just again, sharing my observation. I'm sure others have made the same observation, but in terms of the increases, especially on the expenditure side in relation to operation, they're, very modest. We're talking about 3.6 for administration, not even almost 1% for public safety and so forth, right? So I think at least on the expenditure side, looking at from this fiscal year to the next, it's modest increase, which is good to see, right? Looking at public safety, considering what's currently going on with the tariffs and cost of vehicles and so forth, does that warrant, maybe it's too early, does that warrant a second look at, I know we have, $128,000 budgeted? Is that sufficient? 64 per?
It will be for this next budget.
Okay.
Because I've already locked our rate in to
Okay.
these vehicles. And we discussed and timed that perfectly with Sheehy Ford to make sure that we were good on that. So we're locked in at that, and I'm not concerned about that affecting that larger purchase out of our CIP for that. So it shouldn't be an impact.
Good,
Yes, sir.
good to go. Good job looking ahead, right? Preparing. So,
Always trying to look in the crystal ball.
Okay, all right. Looking at the study, I see here miscellaneous revenue 0% this budget, and they're forecasting 2%. What does cover miscellaneous revenue? What sorts of revenue is that?
Let me pull that up right now.
Page 5, if you're looking at the.
Miscellaneous revenues, it's, that's where we take into account surplus sales. The vehicle sales, you'll see it under that line item. So we don't sell cars every day, we don't sell trailers every year, not necessarily. So that's where you would see the miscellaneous revenues come into play. The reason why there was a higher one in 2024 is because that is where we carried, if you remember, that fraudulent check that we needed to put somewhere once we got the monies back. So that is where miscellaneous would go. It's more for like convenience fees, the citations, veterans banners, reimbursements from insurance. Some of those items that are one-time things that happen are not technically expected on a budget.
Okay, so based on that, it's roughly about 2% of 4.453 million is 90,000, almost 89,000.
The 2024, yeah, it's 92,000 is what
So
was in there.
So come 2030, we may not have such a revenue, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, from here to 5 years, I know that the chief, if he's getting new fleets, I know that he will probably most likely sell some of the older vehicles. I'm happy to say that this first vehicle he sold, the town was able to sell it for $6,100. It is going to be covered in there. But yes, we won't. The miscellaneous is not something that I look to budget until help me balance my budget. If that answers the question.
And well, at least on the forecast in the study, that it looks like they're taking that into consideration.
Yeah,
right?
correct. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Anyone else? No? No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the last table that you gave us that showed the changes in revenue were tax-based tables, is that correct? Percent tax on at 1.05 with the assessments, 1 point. I think that's the table you gave last time, right? Did we ever get I guess the revenue impact on whether if we did like a 6% increase, a 0% increase, 13.5% increase? Did we get what that revenue impact is?
As far as the real estate tax?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was broken out to you. So I believe I could have that again. It was part of the agenda.
I don't seem to have it at my fingertips anymore. But we could get that for the meeting so that people can see what the impact is.
Yes, it was part. So for example, keeping it at 0.105, we projected we would get 537,610 at a equalized rate would bring it down to 0.093. That means that we will only expect to collect budget for 476,169. So you're talking about about $59,000 less. Hold on, apologies. No. But I could print out the scenario again. I have it here. I also did another one that we did last year, which was equalized rate plus 2.8% CPI inflation. This was about a month ago, so I would probably want to look at what the current CPI is. But even then, that would bring it up to 491,530. So yeah, I can get this information out to you guys again, and maybe even look at, for example, that CPI right now, doing the math, it's about $46,000 difference, meaning that we would receive $46,000 less expected revenues. And to offset it would probably be the town center security, the town hall security line item is what we are funding with some of those, the bigger number. So we would probably look to reduce that as well to make it balanced. But I will print this out for you guys again. I'll actually see if I can just print that agenda again all over again, because it has the information and kind of the explanations as to how we came about it.
Yeah, I just wanted the table to see the difference. find out what the different tax percentages would be. What do you feel comfortable with, Joe? What numbers? You said 0. What would be for a 6% increase in revenue?
I don't know. I think we went with equalization, which is 0% increase, but still there's a slight increase regardless sometimes, right, Roberto?
Yeah, the
Yes.
6% was would have been, with the 6% will be 501,770. I apologize. And you reminded me exactly what you're talking about. Yes, you asked me to work on a 6% and a 0%. The 6% would be 501,770. So basically it would be $37,000 less than what the 0.105 would be. If we reduced it down to 6%, it would bring the rate down to 0.098.
Right, it would be about 30,000 less than the 13.6% increase, roughly, something like that. Yeah, so I would propose, I think when we talked about it at the last work session, I suggested, let's look at the 3 different scenarios, right? This is 0, 6, and 13.5 or whatever. And the reason why I would suggest 6 is because when you look at the inflation rate, which roughly in the 3% range, right? Social Security was a 2.5% increase for this year. So 3%, 3.1%. I mean, who knows where it's going to go? So that gives us a little bit more wiggle room, 3% up to 6%, which I think is more palatable than 13.5%.
Actually,
That's my logic.
15.8, right, based on the updated?
Well, that's the total.
The total.
It's a total. So
I'm
that,
just
that
talking
includes
about the
new
real estate.
houses and everything else.
Okay,
That's
okay,
what gives you the
existing,
extra.
you're looking at existing, okay.
Yeah.
Just see what the numbers are, and if the council can live with it.
Yeah.
And Roberto, that 30K rough reduction in revenue that you said that would likely come out of the security. You see that?
Correct, yeah. So the scenarios I worked out was, what would it be, a 10.3%, which would make it, that would make it a rate of 0.102. The total expected revenue would be 522,250. That would make it a 10.3% increase from current budget to the proposed. The 6% increase from current to a proposed would bring the rate down to 0.098. That would be 501,770. And a 0.6, the closest I could get to equalize was a 0.6. A 0.6 will make it 476,169. That rate would be 0.093. And then obviously, as I spoken, the equalized plus the inflation would be a 3.9% increase, which would be 491,530. Does that make sense?
So, when you start squeezing the balloon though, that 37, even though Roberto's saying the first target would be the security line item, we're also talking about debt here and how we're going to shift the debt around. So it's just options on how we want to flow our money. So,
Yeah, but and again, I don't know if my calculations are correct, not including the park sidewalk and all that stuff. If you add up all the increases, right, from this fiscal year to the next, including economic development, which is TOT, right? We're talking about 96,000, right? It's an increase of 96,000. And I know you're not going to like this, but the security line item basically is as a placeholder right now, right? So just think about it. Right now, as we sit, we are projected to have a surplus of 300 some K, right?
This year?
This year, as of right now.
I think it was 640.
Wasn't
No,
it?
It's gonna be higher than that. Currently, right now, we're at 690, 694. So yeah, we're projected.
Okay.
We're projected to probably hit another million the way we're going, because we're not using, the projects are all being funded through ARPA.
So let's think about it. So, well, discounting ARPA. So if we were to discount ARPA, what is our?
That's removing ARPA, because ARPA zeroes out.
Okay.
Because whatever I'm bringing in is exactly what's going out, so it zeroes out. So with that being said, it's around, right now we're at 600, over 600,000. So most likely we'll probably be around $1 million again.
Okay, let's assume 700,000, right? If our revenues stay, let's assume they stay the same. I know there's going to be an increase next fiscal year in comparison to this fiscal year. And if our expenses are only going up by $96,000, that means next year we're going to have 600,000 in surplus. Look at it from that perspective, right? Meaning we're in a good shape, right, to be able to absorb the lower property tax revenue. Does that make sense?
Well,
Huh?
can I,
Okay,
can I
hold on.
rebut that?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure that's the right number on your math. I'm not exactly sure that's correct because if you're talking about the COLAs, you're talking about the potential performance increases, and then the other fringe that follow off of that, I'm not sure it's going to be that much, to be honest with you.
It's not going to be
maybe not.
much.
I'm sorry?
When you say it's not going to be much in
I don't
terms
think
of,
it's going to be as much as you might think on the surplus side for next year. I'm just spitballing right now, but we are increasing our expenses.
so isn't the proposed budget including those things that you just mentioned?
The proposed budget, yeah.
Yeah. So which is, like I said, based on my calculation, that's an increase of about 100K.
Oh, is that what you did?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you subtract 100K from 700K, so next year potentially, right? If revenues even stay the same and our expenses go up by 100K,
Oh,
600K, right?
I stand corrected.
Does that make sense? Where I'm getting at?
Yep.
So I just want the council member to think about that, right? Meaning the property tax, currently, we're proposing increase of $77,000. Even if we were to, we're not proposing you do away with all 77,000. Even if we were, right? We would still be in a good financial standing, a good amount of surplus, if that makes sense, right?
It does. I
Yeah.
think that what I would like to remind everybody is, as we discuss things, and we've discussed several things, police department, staffing, sustainability, and making certain questions are, can we do this? Can we afford this? Are we going to be able to sustain this? So keeping that in mind as well, knowing that we've done a good job. We've done a good job.
Can I want to jump back into what I heard about the security project.
Security line item.
The security line item, when I've asked this question a couple times, it's security line item is what I've been told it'll be removed from.
Well, I think that's debatable. Frankly, if that's how we're going to budget, that's not really the right way to do it. I think there are other places. It's like shaking the cushions, right?
Yep.
You would look at a whole bunch of different expense areas and see what you can generate in savings. For example, the blight line item, that's already been dropped 20,000, right? We haven't used that money forever. And perhaps we drop it another 15. That's 15,000 right there that we can apply to a savings on the tax increase. And leave 5,000 to do whatever needs to be done for cleanup of properties. That's just one line item. We can look at other places and see where perhaps we've over budgeted. So to say it comes out of the security, I don't think that's necessarily true. And we do have other funds available for stuff like that, capital improvements. It's not just going to come out of the operating side. We do have reserves available and other funding to do that project. So I think we've got to take a more holistic approach on the budget and not just go to one line item.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's just that seems to be the answer is it comes out of CIP. So if we need to look at something else, then if we're going to increase by 6% instead of 13%, all right, if we're going, and we are looking now at our existing budget as proposed, and we're talking about, okay, where does it have to come from? Where do we sharpen the pencil? Where does it come from? I'm open to where that comes from. I've just heard it consistently, it's CIP or security. So if it's not that, which I'm kind of in favor of not having it come out of security, I'm all for other ideas as to how we balance that.
And again, I know there might be some back and forth on the, my understanding that security line item is a placeholder. If you were to add up all our revenue, you subtract all our expenses, you're left with that security line item, $173,000. Does that make sense?
Not in this current budget.
Yeah.
Prior budgets, the reason why I worked this budget this specifically time, I agree with you guys.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I'm presenting to you a budget because it seems sometimes that this conversation happens, but no one has a clear direction on how they want to address it. But I created this is the first budget I created where I'm not relying on reserves for CIP, meaning we do have CIP funds available. We have ARPA funds available. So I created a budget that is balanced by expected revenues. So there's no whole placeholders. And technically, it always bothers me that that is said because we have a 5-year CIP plan. That is pretty much what our finance analysis also use as a tool. These are things that maybe you may not agree, maybe not everyone up there agrees that we need certain things done, but since I've been here, this is probably one of the first times we're actually able to execute projects, repairing, to demoing, to connecting the park sidewalk, to all these things that we as staff see. People come in here and love that they see the progress, they see the new stuff going on, they see projects happening finally. To Mr. Passanello's point, you know, we have a lot of new residents, and I've been lucky to meet them, not in always the best circumstances, but it's not the issue of the real estate. It's like they just love the fact being here because that's part of the reason why they came to this community, for the police, the safety, the activities, the community engagement that we have shown in the past 2 years. I mean, that is some big of the selling points. And to the mayor's point, you know, the sustainability is something we should think of. And I know that right now, we're thinking about the right now, but we also got to see 5 years on the road, 10 years on the road. I mean, that's pretty much why we had the forecasting done here, you know. So yeah, that's something to thought. But as far as security, no, I agree with you. We could find other places to cut necessarily, and then look into funding it using reserves. We can do that. We've done that in the past budgets. But to address that point of not saying it's a placeholder, which is not, because it's part of the 5-year CIP plan, you know? It's there, it's a plan. Can we fully fund everything? No. Obviously, that CIP plan would change if, for example, we were to go to a cash and debt for this town center, then that would be out that mix, you know, because it would be on its own thing with the debt obligation, you know, as part being funded that way. But yeah, as far as can we find other places to cut? Sure, we can do that. But I feel like in the work sessions, we haven't talked about that. And now now we're coming up to the public hearing for the budget Monday. And if that's something you guys wish to do, to see other scenarios, I can work that up. It's just that I kind of have to get an idea. During the work sessions, it was not really asked, can we fund it through reserve so we can, you know, those are the questions that we didn't have discussed with us as staff when it comes to the budget. So the budget works right now. Could we do it other ways? Can we fund it 5 other ways to cut? Yes, but that's something that I need some kind of direction, because I don't know what council is thinking about, exactly where they want to cut, if that's what they want to do.
Sorry, just from my understanding, from your proposed budget, this is for growth with the future projects that are going to happen, that we need to get done and that need to happen with all this stuff on here, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is that, guys, we need to do something where I know I hear everybody where it's like, we don't want to cut taxes. We want to keep the flat rate, but at some point we have to do something with the money. I know everybody wants to be conservative, and I do too also, and I hear everybody's comments and what you're saying, but also we've only had a sidewalk demolition done. We have a park, we have a town center, and there's a lot of comprehensive things that need to be done here. And I think we keep on going back and forth. I think we need to come with just kind of an understanding and kind of what we want to do. Because as time goes on, you know, we're going to have to pay ARPA. We're getting interest charged. So we got to figure out something so we can move forward with these plans. And Ruperto has put something together, I think, to put everything that we want done in a format that it's still sustainable for us.
One thing I'd want to say, remember, prime example, I guess, just kind of put it in perspective, trash service. We just entered a contract last year for 5 years. Minimum 4% escalation every year. So by the time this contract's end, it's at least 20% increase without, that's not considering tipping fees. I know by looking at the county discussions and work sessions, next year, there's going to be a discussion on this tipping fee. That will be an additional cost to the town. So when you guys are saying 13% this year, but think about it, we're also increased 4% on our expenditures when it comes to the overall trash. Next year, it could be higher than 4%. So those are factors that I'm thinking ahead of, like, okay, it's not just as simple as right now cutting it, because down the road, we will have to, and if we don't maintain the sustainability, we may be doing a disservice, because then we're having to go into the reserves to make expenditure payments for services for the town residents. That's the concern too. So we got to think about that way too.
Roberto, don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with you, looking ahead and making sure that we're in a good standing and, so forth. But the point here is that, like you said, Mayor, we've done a good job. The staff has, good job managing, our expense, financially speaking, right? We're in a good position, right? In terms of revenue versus expense. So why can't the public, the residents, be beneficiaries, right, of the good job that we've been doing in terms of not limiting the increases? To Joe's point, how many percent did you say over how many years? It's a total 40% increase?
44%
44 over the last, how many years?
in that spreadsheet that
Okay,
Roberto gave us.
so just keep that in mind. That means we, the town residents, the rest of the town residents have faced a 44% increase, right?
And I understand that also, but we've only had a sidewalk and demolition done. Like, I want to be seen on this board as getting stuff done for the community. Like, if we can't come to something to proceed to some cap, we have it in our books here of what we need to do to move forward, to get these projects done. And I understand where you're coming, and I don't want to increase anything on any of the residents, but at the same time, I don't want to come to a situation of where we have all these line items and they're saying, well, our taxes are going up now. Because at some time, the mill tax is going to slow down. Real estate's going to slow down. We're almost built out. So then when are we going to have time to do these capital projects? Because we keep on putting them off. And soon enough, we're not going to have it because we've been doing everything else. So I'm just saying, just look at what Roberto has to put out there. And I think, he's looking out for the best interest of the public and for us to move forward.
I would also like to remind everybody that this is a community-based community. So we come together, and there are some things that you cannot put a price tag on. Yes, we have line items and we budget, but core memories, experiences, knowing that we know each other and that we bring a community together, that is a benefit. So just like everybody keep that in mind.
And again, if we were struggling financially speaking, what have you, I would have a totally different point of view, right? Again, where I'm coming from is, hey, we are, I think, in a good financial position. We can afford to give our residents a break, right, from incurring increases. We can comfortably. I mean, how can you, tell a resident, justify that, hey, the town had $1 million in surplus last year, potentially $700,000 this year, but at the same time, we're going to increase your expenses by increasing your tax, right? How can you justify that? That's how I'm looking at this, right? But anyways, thank you.
Anyone else? I'm capping you. Jeez.
You're stopping me? No, I just want to say, at the end of the day,
It's a vote.
we make a vote, we make a motion, up or down, and we move on.
Okay.
And the staff will do what they have to do to accommodate whatever adjustments we make. But to say that we can't make adjustments, I think is premature. And we should always be looking at ways to save costs. And staff does a very good job of keeping on top of that. But at the end of the day, this is our budget. We're the ones that vote on it. It's our responsibility. We sell it to the residents of town.
Mhm.
That's all. So we make our vote. We move on.
Sorry, I have
It's our
one more.
decision.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Collectively.
Yeah, and I understand, Joe, but I wish we would have done this a while ago. Because now we're coming up, like Roberto said, now we're coming up to a public meeting and now he's got to put all these scenarios together. And this is what I'm talking about is I don't,
Can I gently push back on?
there's just, it's something, we've had this meeting, we've talked about budget for so long. And then we're getting to here and then it's like, I want this again. It's just like this presentation we just had. And we're still talking about it. Like we do a lot of talking, but there is no action.
Well, I would respectfully disagree because
But I'm new to this though
I
also
understand.
too, so I'm still kind of,
a lot of what we've done since 2020 has been more behind the scenes kind of stuff. And
I agree.
And there's been an extensive amount of work. And I'm not going to go through relitigate the whole thing. But again, at the end of the day, we vote up, we vote down. I think we can find places where we can save. I don't think it's that difficult. And frankly, the difference between 6% and 13.6% is really not that much. And if going forward, if we're really dependent on maybe $30,000, we got bigger challenges. In my view. And other issues relate to doing projects and having the proper resources to do all you want to do in a year. There's a lot to be done. And we haven't even talked about incorporating the master plan here, town center site plan, I mean, and incorporating the work for the pavilion. Right, so we've got to plug that back in. When are we going to do that? We have to do that this year. We haven't even really talked a lot about that in budget context. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I've taken enough time.
you know,
Yeah.
that is not at all.
Go ahead.
Just one
Thank you,
statement.
Joe.
Just one comment. Yeah, I think, look, it's a good conversation. These are the conversations, frankly, we were elected to have these conversations. All right, and we were elected to represent. If you talk to, I talk to my neighbors, I talk to residents all the time, ask, what they want out of the town. They want a beautiful park, a perfect town center park, and they want to pay no taxes. And this is the reality. If you ask them, the number one priority that they always say is reduce my taxes, reduce our, and when you have a conversation, they understand that that's not reality, per se. I think though, a responsibility thing that every one of us needs to take on. I feel bad that I'm not going to be here next week. I'm still trying to think of how I can dial in, but I don't think I'll be able to. But I think we should, every one of us, be encouraging. I heard you, Councilman Passanello, about saying, I unfortunately don't think a lot of people will be here commenting. I hate saying that.
Yep.
I absolutely think that we need to be out there. It's incumbent upon us to say, come to the meeting. If you can't be here, send an email to the clerk, have it read into the record, right?
Yep.
We've pushed that a little bit on a couple other issues, and we've actually gotten some better response on some issues. So I think this is the type of thing where we need to do the same exact thing. In our HOA, Facebook pages, let's make sure that we get the word out. Let's look to that communication, new plan that we have to say that, let's use everything that we can to get the input from the town. Because if we hear from them, and they say kind of, about a lot of the same thing, we might get some great input that says, here's where we can direct Roberto and the rest of the staff to say, this is an area we probably want you to look at a little harder. Maybe it is blight. Maybe it is, the town park, I mean, whatever it might be. Let's hear from the residents. Let's get their input. But I think it's our responsibility to really push and to say, on people and say, hey, what do you want? What do you want to see? What do you want to see out of the budget? This is the time we're talking about it, and get them in there. So
We should be doing that on all levels.
we should be doing that on everything, but this is a great topic. These are the conversations we should have, because we come at it from a different perspective.
And then we come to a motion, and then there's a vote.
We move on.
Yep.
I have
Speaking
one more
of
thing
which-
to
Oh,
address,
my
though. I'm
goodness.
sorry.
No, I'm
This,
teasing.
no, if I don't address this is, in some ways, is not a fair comment, though. We first really started talking about the budget at the last work session. That's when we really started having that conversation, in March. Then we had a regular meeting, and this is our first work session since the March meeting. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't make the last meeting, and that's my fault, because, life gets in the way. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
But I will say that every meeting is an opportunity to talk about this. It's never too late to talk about ways to trim the budget or to add to the budget until such time as we take a final vote. That's the only thing I wanted to say. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
No.
So
one more.
so Roberto, I don't know, maybe you have already, right? Maybe it would be beneficial to the town council. In terms of our standing, our reserves, our ARPA, that can be dedicated towards CIP. Is that information readily available that can be shared or can be shared with the council members?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, can we have that maybe for the next meeting, for the next week?
Are you wanting it in a different format?
I just want to, to inform me and others, because it sounds like there are concerns about whether or not we have, about money in terms of if we have any or to dedicate towards CIP and so forth. I just want to address that get ahead of it, right?
Yep.
So that everybody's on the same page, right? Right, that it's not live or die on the 2026 budget, right? In terms of potentially what the CIPs that we can take on, right?
Yep.
I just want that to be understood. Okay, thank you.
I could get that.
All right.
We could definitely discuss in finance, and then I could add it into the agenda for
Sure.
Monday's meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on.
Move on.
Moving right along. All right. Ken.
Okay, we're all set. I move Haymarket Town Council go into a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2 strike 3711A1, a personnel matter involving the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific
All right, so we have come out of closed session and need to certify. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move that the council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed in a closed session under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act
as cited in that motion.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Casanella.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Hager.
I'm out of breath.
Baker.
Yes.
Deanna.
Aye.
All right, so is there any other business before town council?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
There you go.
Thank
All in
you.
favor?
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye.